Chapter 654. Xiaoling Yu's eyelids trembled when he heard Cui Yu's greeting. You were in Shang or couldn't be Jianwan Yu and Jianwan Chang, right? After a while, the two beautiful girls entered the room together. However, the two girls were astonished when they saw Xiaoling Yu. Come, you are, Shang, come and greet Senior Xiao. Cui Yu beckoned to the two girls. The two girls who entered the room were Jianwan Yu and her sister. They were stunned when they heard their master ask them to call Xiaoling Yu Senior. Call him Senior? Master, did you make a mistake? Impudent. Before Jianwan Chang could finish speaking, Cui Yu slammed his palm on the table in front of him. However, he didn't use too much force. He said to Jianwan Chang, Xiao Daoyu is your master's friend. We are of the same generation. If you don't call him Senior, what should you call him? Jianwan Chang puffed up her cheeks and said unhappily, but he used to call us Senior. Cui Yu was slightly surprised when he heard this. However, he soon recalled that Xiaoling Yu hadn't cultivated for too long. It wasn't impossible for him to call his two disciples Senior in the past. Therefore, his expression softened a little. The past is the past. The present is the present. Don't you think I should call you Senior now? Cui Yu said seriously. Jianwan Chang wanted to refute but was pulled back by his sister, Jianwan Yue. Brother Cui, these two have quite a good relationship with me. They've helped me in the past and even saved my life. I absolutely don't dare to let them address me as Senior, said Xiaoling Yu. Ah, that's nice to hear. Jianwan Chang rubbed his delicate nose and said with a smile. Jianwan Yu had a lot of thoughts in her mind. In the blink of an eye, millions of years had passed. Xiaoling Yu's reappearance was unbelievable. Beauties loved heroes since ancient times. Although Xiaoling Yu couldn't be considered a hero, he was at least a rapidly rising expert. Now that he could call the sacred god his brother, his future was bound to be limitless. For a girl from a large family like Jianwan Yu, anyone who could move her heart would definitely be a hero. Jianwan Yu already had some feelings for Xiaoling Yu. After so many years, Zhao's calmness when he faced the sacred god naturally won over Jianwan Yu's heart. She couldn't help but recall the beautiful years she spent in the ancient god's immortals cave in the cultivation world, and the time she spent together in the floating Su mountain range. Don't just stand there. Boil a pot of misty lotus tea for me and brother Xiao. Cui Yu waved his hand and said. Ah. Miss tea. Master, I didn't know you could be so generous, Jianwan Chang said, seemingly surprised. Humph. When have I ever been stingy? Cui Yu said with a straight face. Jianwan Chang and Jianwan Yu didn't say anything else. They obediently went to the side room where the tea brewing utensils were. However, the side room and the main hall were not very large and were only separated by a bead curtain. Everyone could hear what was going on inside or outside. Brother Xiao, I see that you don't look well and you seem to be worried. You must have something to say in Kongrong Mountain, right? As a saint god expert, Cui Yu was very good at reading people's faces. To tell you the truth, I've come here for two reasons. Firstly, to visit Brother Cui and have a chat. Secondly, I have something to ask of you. Xiaoling Yu smiled bitterly and said. Ha, Brother Xiao can speak frankly. This old man will do his best. Cui Yu smiled generously. In the side room, the two sisters perked up their ears to listen. How difficult could it be for Xiaoling Yu to call the sacred god his brother? Xiaoling Yu hesitated for a moment, then took out the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron and asked Qing Xian to come out. She then put away the cauldron. Qing Xian, this is Brother Cui, a saint god expert. Come and greet him. Xiaoling Yu introduced. Qing Xian was slightly surprised. Although she couldn't see through Cui Yu's cultivation, Cui Yu did seem like an expert. She bowed and said, Greetings, Senior Cui. Because she wasn't sure if she was Qing Xian or Qiu Shuang, Qing Xian didn't add her name. Cui Yu nodded in response. Although the peak of Kongrong Mountain was cold and the pressure was great, Cui Yu's courtyard was no different from any other place in the God realm. Brother Chui, this Qing Xian is my. Xiaoling Yu paused for a moment and glanced at the side room. However, she still said, she's my wife. Ah. He has a wife? Before Xiaoling Yu could finish his words, 2 gasps of surprise came from the side room one after another. Don't worry and brew the tea, Chui Yu reminded in annoyance. However, he was a little puzzled by his disciple's reaction. She ascended to the God realm not long ago, but a part of her soul memory was erased by the people of Fuping Bei's Agarwood sect. Little brother is here to ask Brother Chui to help restore that memory, Xiaoling Yu continued. Although the side room was quiet, the 2 sisters couldn't calm down and brew tea. After a moment of surprise, Jiang Lanchang angrily looked outside. Jiang Lanyu first glanced at Qing Xian, then her hands trembled in the tea. Chui Yu frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, his eyes suddenly shone. The divine light instantly pierced Qing Xian's knowledge sea and soul. After a brief examination, Chui Yu said, fortunately, the person who erased her soul memory didn't have a high cultivation. She still has some fragments of her soul memory in the depths of her consciousness. Xiaoling Yu's eyes lit up when he heard this. Then I'll have to trouble you, brother. It's a small matter. Let's drink tea first, then I'll cast the spell. Chui Yu waved his hand dismissively. The misty lotus tea was like its name. If the lid of the teapot was opened, a lotus flower that was condensed from mist would appear. The tea that was poured into the cup would also ceaselessly emit tea mist. It would similarly condense into numerous lotus flowers, appearing incomparably magical. As for the taste of mist lotus tea, it was indeed extraordinary. However, Xiaoling Yu rarely tasted tea, and he was in a hurry to recover Qing Xian's memories. Therefore, he didn't taste anything special. Jiang Lanyu and Jiang Lanchang also waited on him while they tasted the tea. However, the 2 sisters were very quiet. Chui Yu had accepted these 2 sisters as his disciples for millions of years. He knew that these 2 sisters were lively and active people. At least in this small courtyard of his, they were rarely so quiet. Coupled with the surprised voices of the 2 sisters just now, he could guess that there was something going on. After tasting the tea, Chui Yu invited Xiaoling Yu and Qing Xian to a secret room. He ordered Jiang Lanyu and her sister to stand guard outside the door. Then, he sat down cross-legged and asked Qing Xian to sit across from him. Sister-in-law, calm down first. Guard your mind and keep your consciousness clear, Chui Yu first reminded Qing Xian. When Qing Xian closed her eyes, he took out an incense burner and inserted a stick of incense into it. Then, he said to Xiaoling Yu, light this incense stick and let it float above sister-in-law's head. Xiaoling Yu did as she was told. Then, she asked, is this incense stick a soul-replenishing incense? Chui Yu nodded and said, although sister-in-law still has fragments of her soul memories, they are too little. Without the soul-replenishing incense, I'm afraid it will be difficult to recover them all. This soul-replenishing incense is comparable to the saint grade. Brother, you've spent a lot of money this time, Xiaoling Yu said gratefully. Haha, a mere soul-replenishing incense is nothing. If I have any requests in the future, Brother Xiao, please don't refuse. Chui Yu waved his hand and smiled. After the soul-replenishing incense was lit, it continuously released wisps of mist. The fragrant mist, which was supposed to slowly rise into the air and then disperse, did not rise. Instead, it fell continuously and gathered above Qing Xian's head. When the fragrant mist covered half of Qing Xian's body, Chui Yu, who had been adjusting his breath for a while, suddenly stretched out a finger and pointed at Qing Xian's forehead through the mist. Brother Xiao, I'll activate the fragments of her memories in the depths of her consciousness. You can see what you know and help her expand the contents of her memory fragments. Chui Yu reminded Xiaoling Yu at the same time. Xiaoling Yu did as she was told. While controlling the incense burner, she poured her thoughts into Qing Xian's sea of consciousness. While they were nervously casting spells in the secret room, outside the secret room, Jiang Lanyu and her sister were also silently communicating. I really couldn't tell that this guy was such a heartless lover, Jiang Lanchang said a little angrily. He's begging the sacred god for his wife. How is that heartless? Jiang Wanchong asked with a bitter smile. You've been so good to him. How can he marry another woman? Isn't that heartless betrayal? Jiang Wanchong said with a strong sense of righteousness. There's no love affair between us. He has the freedom to choose his own marriage. How can that be considered betrayal? Jiang Wanhua replied. Why are you still defending him at this point? Jiang Wanchong said unhappily. I'm only stating the truth. Jiang Wanhua said. Humph. Jiang Wanchong snorted indignantly and said, to think that I thought he was someone important. I didn't expect that. He's also a scum, an animal. Jiang Wanchong was very angry. It seemed that only by scolding her sister could she vent her anger. She could tell that her sister did have some feelings for Xiaolingyu, so she subconsciously believed that Xiaolingyu belonged to her sister. Moreover, the two of them were a match made in heaven. Therefore, she couldn't accept the fact that Xiaolingyu already had a wife. She didn't think that it was normal for Xiaolingyu to have a wife. After all, her sister and Xiaolingyu weren't engaged to each other and didn't make any verbal promises of love. Are we just going to let this go? Jiang Wanchong asked after scolding her sister. Sigh. Jiang Wanhua could only sigh deeply. This was probably what people meant by fate. We can't let that guy off so easily. Jiang Wanchong said hatefully. Chapter 655. I don't care who he is. Even if he's Master's friend, I'll beat him up if I don't like him. Jiang Wanchong said, waving her fists. You have to be able to defeat him first. Since he's Master's friend, he's definitely stronger than you. Don't forget, he could already kill God Emperor experts millions of years ago. Jiang Wanhua reminded her, shaking her head. That's true. Jiang Wanchong put down her fists and said dejectedly, how can he improve so fast? Yes, how can he improve so fast? Jiang Wanhua was also thinking about this question. When they first met in the cultivation world, he was just a mortal. At that time, Jiang Wanhua was already a God King expert. The last time they met, Jiang Wanhua was comparable to an ordinary God King. At that time, Jiang Wanhua was still a God King. Now, not only could Jiang Wanhua kill God Emperors, but he was also a God King expert's friend. Although Jiang Wanhua was only half a step away from becoming a God Emperor with the help of her master, she was still a God King. Jiang Wanhua was still lingering in a big realm, while Jiang Wanhua had crossed countless realms and achieved amazing achievements. This huge gap in contrast made Jiang Wanhua feel a little envious and jealous. If Jiang Wanhua hadn't resisted the mist, would she have been able to improve so fast? This was probably fate. Jiang Wanhua smiled bitterly again, but he couldn't get rid of the entanglement in his heart. Seeing that the person he loved already had a wife, Jiang Wanhua really didn't know how to choose. Giving up, how could he bear it? Fighting for, without any reason. You stay here, I'll go into seclusion to calm down. Finally, Jiang Wanhua stood up and walked out of the room. But Master asked me to stay here? Jiang Wanchong reminded him. If Master asks, just tell him that I'm going into seclusion to break through to the God Emperor realm. After saying that, Jiang Wanhua disappeared from the room. Watching his sister disappear before his eyes, Jiang Wanchong felt even more resentful. He slammed the wall and cursed, it's all that damned guy's fault. How despicable. Jiang Wanchong knew that her sister must be feeling very uncomfortable, but she was not good at comforting people, so she did not chase after them. In her opinion, her sister really needed to be alone and calm down, not really to break through to the God Emperor realm. After standing guard outside the secret chamber for nearly 100 years, the door to the secret chamber finally opened again. Jiang Wanchong first saw his master walk out with a tired face, and then the door to the secret room closed again. Master, is the matter settled? Although he was very unhappy that Xiaolingyu already had a wife, Jiang Wanchong still hoped that things would go smoothly. Haha, with Master's help and the soul replenishing incense, how could it not be resolved? Chuiyu replied with a smile and then asked, where's your sister? Jiang Wanchong hesitated for a moment and then replied, She's in a bad mood, so she went into seclusion to cultivate. She said that she won't come out until she reaches the God Emperor realm. Chueyu frowned and said, "Nonsense, how can she go into such an important cultivation when her mood is fluctuating? Isn't that courting death?" Hearing this, Jiang Lanchang suddenly came to a realization, but then she said, "I think sister is just saying it. She definitely won't break through to the God Emperor realm." Chueyu narrowed his eyes and released his divine sense. Then, his expression changed greatly and he said, "Not good," and then teleported away. In an ice cave, Jiang Lanhua sat cross-legged on a lotus platform that was completely made of ice. Her aura was very chaotic, and her eyebrows were almost knitted together. Her expression showed that she was in pain, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. At this moment, from under the ice lotus pedestal, waves of special energy continuously surged out and flowed around Jiang Lanhua's body. It had the effect of relieving the pressure brought about by the disorder of her cultivation, and also the effect of helping her to calm her mind. But even so, Jiang Lanhua's face was still as pale as paper, and her whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Chueyu, who was wearing a white robe and had a tired expression, teleported into the ice cave. He floated in front of Jiang Lanhua and shouted, "Idiot, stop!" This shout caused Jiang Lanhua to open her eyes. Her originally beautiful, clear, and bright eyes were now filled with blood vessels. "Master, save me!" Jiang Lanhua whispered in a trembling voice. Chueyu's heart ached when he saw this. He immediately moved behind Jiang Lanhua and placed his palms on her shoulders. In the fragrant secret room, Qing Xian also slowly opened her eyes. When she saw the familiar and caring face, she couldn't help but cry and throw herself into Shaolin Yu's arms. "Now I don't need to prove it, right?" Shaolin Yu hugged Qing Xian tightly as he felt the strange aura that was warm and soft with a bit of coldness in her delicate body, and asked in a soft voice. Qing Xian didn't say anything. She just hugged Shaolin Yu tightly, as if she was worried that Shaolin Yu would immediately fly away if she let go of her arms. Shaolin Yu lifted Qing Xian's chin and kissed her red lips fiercely, causing Qing Xian's face to turn red. After spending some time together at floating Duckweed Bay, Shaolin Yu often had the urge to pull Qing Xian into his arms and be intimate with her. Unfortunately, Qing Xian hadn't recovered her memories, so he couldn't do that. "Big sister Anya has also ascended tens of thousands of years earlier than me," Qing Xian said after a while. Although Qing Xian was much older than Anya in terms of age, and Jing was Shaolin Yu's first wife after all, Qing Xian naturally had to call her big sister. "Have you found big sisters Anya and Miaoying?" Qing Xian asked again. "Not yet, but I believe it won't take long," Shaolin Yu replied. "Okay." Qing Xian responded softly, then silently lay in Shaolin Yu's arms. She naturally didn't doubt Shaolin Yu. Although Qing Xian had recovered her memories, she didn't lose her memories after ascending to the heavenly realm. She knew that her husband was now a top expert in the heavenly realm. This made her feel that she had someone to rely on, even though she didn't like relying on others. After hugging each other for an entire day in the secret chamber, Shaolin Yu finally brought Qing Xian out of the secret chamber. At this moment, Jiang Lanchang was no longer guarding the secret chamber. Shaolin Yu brought Qing Xian to the main room first. After waiting for 3 whole days, Chueyu returned to the main room. However, Chueyu looked even more tired than before. He even looked a lot older. "Brother Xiao, how's sister-in-law's recovery?" Chueyu asked with concern. Thanks to Brother Xiao's help, Qing Xian has completely recovered her memories." "Thank you, Brother Xiao. If Brother Xiao needs any help in the future, I'll go through water and tread on fire. I won't hesitate to die for you." Shaolin Yu replied with a smile. "Okay." Chueyu nodded calmly. Shaolin Yu could tell that Chueyu wasn't in a good mood. He seemed to have something heavy on his mind. He asked, "Brother Xiao, you seem to have something on your mind." Chueyu sighed and said, "While we were restoring sister-in-law's memories, my disciple, Lan Yu, actually tried to break through to the God Emperor realm. In the end?" "In the end?" Shaolin Yu asked nervously. Seeing that Xiaoling Yu's nervousness didn't seem to be fake, Qing Xian frowned slightly. In the end, she wasn't able to resist her inner demons, which caused her cultivation to collapse. Not only were all the meridians in her body destroyed, even her consciousness sank into a muddled state, Chuiyu replied dejectedly. Although she was a disciple that he had just accepted not too long ago, and although the reason why he had accepted her as his disciple was because of his family Jiang, she was still a disciple that he had trained for many years. At this moment, Chuiyu naturally didn't feel good. "Quick, take me to see her." Xiaoling Yu suddenly stood up and said anxiously. After all, Jiang Lanhua was one of the reasons why Xiaoling Yu had actively cultivated to the God realm. Now that such an unfortunate thing had happened to Jiang Lanhua, there was no way he could remain calm. Seeing that Xiaoling Yu was so enthusiastic and agitated, Chuiyu thought to himself, sure enough, there's a problem. Then, his expression didn't change as he led the way in front. Qing Xian followed closely behind. Although his expression was calm, his thoughts were surging. He guessed, could it be that this guy wants to have another concubine? They didn't walk far before Chuiyu led Xiaoling Yu and Qing Xian out of the courtyard and into an ice cave at the top of the mountain. Xiaoling Yu naturally helped Qing Xian resist the strange cold and spatial pressure at the top of the mountain. In the depths of the ice cave, Jiang Lanhua was lying quietly on the ice lotus platform while Jiang Lanchang stood guard beside her. Xiaoling Yu quickly walked to the edge of the lotus platform and used his divine sense to scan Jiang Lanhua's body. Then, he frowned and said, "Why are her injuries so serious?" If her injuries weren't so serious, why would Chuiyu, a saint god, find them so troublesome? Don't play dumb. It's all because of you. Jiang Lanchang glared at Xiaoling Yu and said angrily, "If it weren't for a fickle lover like you, would my elder sister have broken through to the God Emperor realm on her own? If it weren't for a bastard like you, would my elder sister have been unable to resist her inner demons while trying to break through to the God Emperor realm? If it weren't for a heartless bastard like you, would my elder sister have ended up like this?" Jiang Lanchang was also anxious because of her elder sister's condition. In addition, she was angry with Xiaoling Yu before, so she naturally wouldn't be polite with her words and didn't have too many misgivings. Impudent. Chuiyu stood in front of her and pretended to reprimand her. In fact, he also wanted to hear the story. When Jiang Lanchang heard her master's reprimand, she felt a little wronged and tears flickered in her eyes. "Brother Xiao, please don't take offense. Lang Chang has always been a child and doesn't know any better. Please forgive her for offending you," Chuiyu said in a seemingly apologetic tone. Xiaoling Yu was also a little surprised. Jiang Lanchang's reaction was a little too intense and made him feel a little unprepared. However, Xiaoling Yu naturally wouldn't bicker or argue with Jiang Lanchang. He simply took out a saint pill and handed it to Chuiyu, saying, "This saint pill should be able to help her stabilize her injuries. It's also helpful for the injuries to her soul." Chuiyu was overjoyed and said, "That's right. With this saint pill and this old man's energy and time, Lan Yu can indeed recover. Thank you for your generous help, Brother Xiao." Chapter 656. He shouldn't be as simple as saving her life, right? Qing Xian was quite experienced. From Xiaoling Yu's anxious expression and the fact that he didn't hesitate to take out a precious saint pill, she could tell that Xiaoling Yu cared a lot about this woman who was lying on the ice lotus platform. In addition to Jiang Lanchang's scolding just now, Qing Xian could also guess that this heavily injured woman also had feelings for her husband. Seeing Xiaoling Yu take out a saint pill to save his sister, Jiang Lanchang's hatred for him dissipated a little. He didn't scold him anymore. Chuiyu fed Jiang Lanhua the saint pill and helped her dissolve the medicinal power of the saint pill. From how Xiaoling Yu was healed by the saint pill last time, it could be seen that the saint pill's medicinal power was very strong. At this time, the saint pill's powerful medicinal power was also used on Jiang Lanhua. It didn't disappoint everyone. In just 3 days, Jiang Lanhua's broken meridians were all reconnected. In fact, the saint pill's medicinal power had only been used for less than a third. The saint pill was also very effective in healing soul injuries. In addition, Chueyu had given Jiang Lanyu a top-grade soul divine pill before, so Jiang Lanyua's soul was already fine. Fortunately, she had the saint pill and a saint god master. If an ordinary god king failed to break through to the god emperor stage, they wouldn't have survived. Jiang Lanyua gradually woke up. When she opened her eyes, she looked around in confusion. Then, she lowered her head silently and didn't say a word. This time, she had walked on the edge of life and death. When she failed to break through to the God Emperor stage, she had already taken one step into the abyss of death. This time, it's all thanks to Brother Zhao's Saint Pill. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to keep your life. Quickly come and thank him. Chueyu reminded Jiang Lanyue. What are you thanking me for? This happened because of him. It's fine if my sister gets better, but if anything happens to her, I won't rest until I'm dead. Jiang Lanchang said unhappily. How dare you? Chueyu raised his arm and was about to slap Jiang Lanchang's mouth, but Xiaolingyu was one step ahead and grabbed Chueyu's wrist. Chueyu did not intend to hit his female disciple, so he did not use his full strength. After Xiaolingyu stopped him, he retracted his arm. Jiang Lanchang's face was filled with stubbornness. Seeing that her master, who had always been kind, actually wanted to hit her, she felt even more wronged and tears streamed down her face. Brother Xiao, I've made a fool of myself in front of you. Chueyu said in embarrassment. It's okay, they're all my friends, Xiaolingyu said sincerely. Langchang, stay here and accompany your sister. Chueyu instructed before turning to Xiaolingyu. Brother Xiao, let's return to the courtyard. She followed Chueyu back to the main room of the courtyard. Xiaolingyu and Qin Xian sat together while Chueyu sat across from them. Brother Xiao, have you heard anything since you came back? Chueyu asked. What are you talking about? Xiaolingyu asked in confusion. It seems like you haven't heard anything. Chueyu pondered for a moment before continuing. I also just heard about it after I came back. During the time I went to the night demons to participate in the auction, a black light kept flashing in the sky of the mountain tribe, which is not far from the narrow divine realm where we humans and demons live. The black light was very obvious. Even though it was far away, it could be seen clearly at the border between our narrow divine realm and the mountain tribe. Xiaolingyu frowned and asked, is there something fishy about this? Chueyu nodded and said, according to records, that kind of black light also appeared in our narrow divine realm before. At that time, it brought about a catastrophe to our narrow divine realm. Corpses were everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. Even more than half of the Saint God experts died. Xiaolingyu speculated, Brother Xiao, what you mean is that this time, the black light will also bring about a catastrophe and affect us. Chueyu nodded and said, after all, the mountain tribe is not far from here. It is very likely that our human and demon races will be affected. When the black light appeared in our narrow divine realm, all the races around us were affected to varying degrees. There were even 2 races that were slightly weaker that were directly wiped out. Xiaolingyu, on the other hand, asked in surprise, what kind of catastrophe could have such power? Chueyu shook his head and said, there are no detailed records of this. After all, too much time has passed. The cultivators who personally experienced that catastrophe are either dead or no longer in the narrow divine realm. Many of the limited records have been buried in history or taken away by some powerhouses. The only information we have is that the black light will bring about a powerful race of unknown origin. This race only appears in the divine realm once every billion years. Every time they appear in a different place, they will bring the same nightmare and disaster to a certain region of the divine realm. Since they can bring about such an unimaginable catastrophe, could it be that there are heaven-piercing powerhouses in this race? Xiaolingyu asked. There are no heaven-piercing powerhouses. However, even if there are heaven-piercing powerhouses, they can only barely protect themselves if several heaven-piercing powerhouses move together. This is because they have over 100 saint gods. Moreover, these saint gods have some strange divine abilities. Chueyu shook his head and then said worriedly, right now, the mountain tribe is incomparably terrified. They have abandoned their homeland and are constantly fleeing to the surrounding races. Most of them have rushed into our narrow divine realm. They are moving separately and the border is too long. We can't stop them at all. The mountain tribe should be a fairly powerful race. They seem to be right next to the night demons. The territory they occupy is not much smaller than our narrow divine realm. Even if we want to stop them, I'm afraid it will be very difficult. Shaolin Yu nodded. Once that race arrives in the mountain tribe and there are not many mountain tribe cultivators, they will definitely invade the surrounding races. The chances of our human and demon races suffering another catastrophe are very high. Chui Yu said. Then what should we do? Shaolin Yu asked. That black light has just appeared. In less than 10,000 years, that race will definitely appear again. We need to do our best to raise our cultivation and strength within these 10,000 years. Otherwise, we can escape. Chui Yu replied. Escape? Shaolin Yu pondered for a moment and said, I can't escape. I still have relatives in the divine realm that I can't abandon but have yet to find. Qing Xian knew that Shaolin Yu was referring to Anya and Miaoling. We sacred gods can't escape either. Not only for our race, but also for ourselves. If we escape now, we can never hope to go to Skirich Sacred Island in the future. If we don't go to Skirich Sacred Island, we will never have the chance to enter the Skirich realm. If the human race is destroyed, we won't have the face to go to Skirich Sacred Island to meet our seniors. Chui Yu said helplessly. Actually, we can unite all the surrounding races and gather our strength to welcome that race's arrival together. Shaolin Yu suggested. That's too difficult. After all, the neighboring races don't get along well with each other. In fact, they often fight against each other. Even if they are temporarily tied together, it will be difficult for them to work together. When the time comes, there will definitely be powerhouses who don't contribute. Everyone will gather together and watch each other, waiting for others to contribute. It's better to fight on our own. Chui Yu smiled bitterly. Then what do you plan to do, brother? Shaolin Yu asked. What else can I plan? Apart from raising my own strength, I can only unite more sacred gods. At this point, Chui Yu's face became gloomy. Actually, the human race is the most disunited race. Even in times of crisis like this, there will always be people who have selfish motives. It's harder than ascending to the heavens to unite all the human cultivators. Shaolin Yu agreed with this point. Not to mention others, even he himself wasn't a selfless person. Brother, what do you plan to do? Chui Yu asked. Me? I'll take one step at a time. Eccentric Dugu is still looking for me. Shaolin Yu said with a smile. Brother, do you really have a grudge against that eccentric? Chui Yu asked in surprise. Yes. In fact, I didn't provoke him. It's just that he covets the treasures on my body and is looking for trouble for no reason. Shaolin Yu said indifferently. That eccentric isn't easy to deal with. The 6th layer of his heavenly sword art is enough to deal with ordinary sacred gods. Now that he's reached the 7th layer, it's said that he can kill sacred gods. I'm afraid that he's already the strongest human in the narrow sense of the god realm. I reckon that he won't even lose to those sacred god super divine beasts of the demon race. Chui Yu said worriedly. Previously in Duckweed Bay, I already experienced it. He only used the 6th layer of the heavenly sword art, and I could only flee in defeat. I was unable to fight him. In order to escape, I even self-destructed a sacred artifact. Shaolin Yu said bitterly. Brother, although you haven't reached the sacred god realm, you already have the strength of a sacred god. You also have a sacred artifact that can teleport. That eccentric Dugu will find it difficult to fight you. However, it's better to be careful. Don't run into him again. Last time, he used the 6th layer of the heavenly sword art and failed to stop you. Next time, I'm afraid that he'll directly use the 7th layer. Chui Yu kindly reminded. The two were silent for a while. Only then did Shaolin Yu get up and say, I still have some other matters to attend to. I won't disturb elder brother here. Chui Yu didn't urge him to stay and personally sent Shaolin Yu down the mountain. But as he was sending him off, Chuiyu couldn't help but send a sound transmission to Xiaoling Yu. Brother, is there something going on between you and my disciple Jiang Lanyue? Xiaoling Yu first glanced at Qing Xian before replying via voice transmission. It's a long story. Allow me to explain it to you in the future. When Xiaoling Yu heard his question and looked at his wife, Chuiyu was even more certain that there was something going on between him and his disciple Jiang Lanyue. Moreover, it was most likely a love affair. Chapter 657. The reason why Xiaoling Yu was in a hurry to leave was because he heard the news of the impending catastrophe. He couldn't delay any longer and had to find Anya and Miaoing as soon as possible. Secondly, he didn't want Qing Xian to misunderstand. Xiaoling Yu did have a deep affection for Jiang Lanyue. He already had this affection when he was in the ancient god's cave in the cultivation world. However, at that time, he cared more about his girlfriend on Earth, Gu Xiaomin. Therefore, at that time, he didn't have much feelings for Jiang Lanyue. He only treated Jiang Lanyue as his savior and a little girl who ran away from home. However, Xiaoling Yu and his girlfriend on Earth, Gu Xiaomin, had only dated for less than 2 years. However, he had been with Jiang Lanyue for 5 years. Naturally, he couldn't help but have some feelings for Jiang Lanyue. However, because the gap between the two of them was too big, he didn't have any extravagant hopes at all. In Xiaoling Yu's opinion, Jiang Lanyue shouldn't have any feelings for him. At that time, she was trapped in the ancient god's cave and was helpless and bored. That was why she was so good to him and took care of him so much. Xiaoling Yu didn't feel this. When his girlfriend on Earth, Gu Xiaomin, married someone else, he wasn't too sad and mournful because there was another beautiful figure in his heart. His love for Gu Xiaomin had long been blurred. Otherwise, with his temperament, it would have been very difficult for him to give up. It wasn't that Xiaoling Yu didn't understand his feelings for Jiang Lanyue. It was just that he already had a wife, and more than one at that. He really didn't know how to face this feeling. After all, Jiang Lanyue was the daughter of one of the top wealthy families in the god's realm. Could she serve the same husband as other women? From the reaction of Jiang Lanyue and Jiang Lanchang when they found out that he had a wife, it was obvious that the answer was no. Since that was the case, why should Xiaoling Yu fall into this trap? Jiang Lanyue was indeed a good woman. However, Xiaoling Yu also had to consider the feelings of Qing Xian, who was already his wife. After all, his wife had also fought for him. They were all close relatives who were willing to die for him. There was still some difference between them and Jiang Lanyue, who had saved him along the way. Xiaoling Yu could only feel deeply guilty about Jiang Lanyue failing to break through to the god's realm because of him. Husband, since those two sisters saved your life, it's only appropriate for you to say goodbye to them in person when you leave this time. As they flew out of the mountain range, Qing Xian reminded him tentatively. It's fine. They aren't people who like to fuss about it, so they won't blame me for it. Xiaoling Yu smiled. That sister seems to have a lot of opinions about you, Qing Xian said meaningfully. She's just like a child. She'll scold me if she doesn't get what she wants. However, I don't think she'll really take it to heart, Xiaoling Yu said vaguely. It was indeed inappropriate to explain too much about this matter. Otherwise, it would be seen as a cover-up. Seeing how close they are, I kind of miss Anya and Miaoying, Qing Xian said with a sigh. We'll find them soon, Xiaoling Yu said confidently. After Xiaoling Yu left the Kongrong mountain, Chuiyu first looked at his 2 female disciples and told them that Xiaoling Yu had left. Then, he went to meditate to recover. First, he helped Qing Xian recover her memory. Then, he treated Jiang Lanyue. Chuiyu had expended too much energy and needed to recover quickly. This was also one of the reasons why he didn't ask Xiaoling Yu to stay. Sister, that bastard is really fickle. He didn't even say goodbye when he left, Jiang Lanchang said unhappily. He has a wife by his side. Naturally, he can't be too friendly with us, Jiang Lanyue said with a wry smile. If that bastard didn't take out the divine pill for you, I really wouldn't have let him go so easily. Jiang Lanchang still looked angry. We'd better cultivate properly in the future. We've fallen too far behind, Jiang Lanhua changed the topic. We've fallen too far behind that bastard. I don't see anyone in the same generation as us who has a higher cultivation than us, Jiang Lanchang said unhappily. Jiang Lanchang was unconvinced, and then said, it's time to cultivate. I heard from Master that the human and demon clans are about to face a catastrophe. If we don't work hard, I'm afraid we won't even have the ability to protect ourselves when the time comes. However, I have the God Emperor Void Spirit with me. It won't be long before I can smoothly advance to the God Emperor stage. Even if I fully recover this time, it'll be difficult for me to break through to the God Emperor stage, Jiang Lanhua said bitterly. Sister, don't be discouraged. You must know that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. As long as you can completely relax next time, you'll definitely be able to advance to the God Emperor stage. You must know that we have a Saint God Master. He'll definitely do his best to help you when the time comes, Jiang Lanchang consoled. That's true. If I didn't act on my own initiative this time, and if Master was protecting and helping me, I would have been able to break through to the God Emperor stage without any problems, Jiang Lanhua nodded. After flying away from the mountain range, Xiaolingyu used the tube-shaped saint weapon to activate greater teleportation. When she reappeared, she was at the border of the narrow god realm and the mountain tribe. High up in the sky, Xiaolingyu narrowed her eyes and looked at the territory of the mountain tribe. She could see a black light flickering from time to time. Even though it was far away, it still gave off a strong sense of oppression. Qing Xian, who was standing beside Xiaolingyu, couldn't feel this kind of oppression. At this moment, within the range of Xiaolingyu's divine sense, there were countless cultivators of the mountain tribe who were as tall as mountains. They were constantly rushing towards the narrow god realm. Although the news of the catastrophe hadn't spread in the narrow god realm, the cultivators of both the human and demon races near the mountain tribe had already moved deeper into the narrow god realm on a large scale. Not to mention that everyone was still hoping that the catastrophe wouldn't affect the narrow god realm. Even if they knew that the catastrophe was coming, they wouldn't easily leave the narrow god realm. It wasn't just because this was their home, it was also because leaving the narrow god realm wasn't necessarily safe. After all, many foreign races were very xenophobic. After observing and sensing for a while, Xiaolingyu activated the tubular saint artifact's greater teleportation once more and left the border of the mountain tribe. After finding a random place, Xiaolingyu brought Qing Xian into the tubular saint artifact. Then, she handed over the God Emperor Hollow Spirit of the Chao clan's female empress to Qing Xian and said, "This is a God Emperor Hollow Spirit. Perhaps you still don't know its use, but absorb it into your body first. I'll explain it to you later." Seeing Qing Xian absorb the God Emperor Hollow Spirit into his body, Guanyiwei was very envious. He couldn't help but recall that Boss Xiao had once said that he would get himself a God Emperor Hollow Spirit. Qing Xian was already very talented. With a God Emperor Hollow Spirit, not only would he progress faster in the future, there was no doubt that he would become a God Emperor. Brother Guan, I have a lot of divine crystals and cultivation resources here. Use them. Tell the brothers below to stop doing anything else and find your other two sisters-in-law as soon as possible. Xiaolingyu handed a storage ring to Guanyiwei and instructed. After Guanyiwei nodded seriously, Xiaolingyu sent him out of the eight-legged Tai Chi cauldron. After exiting the eight-legged Tai Chi cauldron, Guanyiwei identified the direction and flew away while checking the storage ring. It would have been better if he didn't check it. After checking it, Guanyiwei was shocked. The mountain of divine crystals in the storage ring made him feel a little dizzy. In addition to divine crystals, there were countless high-grade magic treasures and materials. Guanyiwei felt that he would need a long time to go through all of them. No wonder Boss Xiao doesn't let the brothers do anything else. With such wealth, the Hua men can survive even if they don't have any income for hundreds of thousands of years. Guanyiwei was excited and his flying speed increased by a lot. Xiaolingyu could guess that old man Duga must be looking for him in the narrow sense of the divine realm. He could have left the narrow sense of the divine realm with a great teleportation, but he couldn't. He had to stay in the narrow sense of the divine realm and wait for news of Miaoing and Anya. If he left too far, even if the Hua Men's disciples were all over the narrow sense of the divine realm, they wouldn't be able to reach him. However, it wouldn't be easy for old man Dugu to find him in the vast divine realm. Xiaolingyu didn't have to worry too much about it. Xiaolingyu needed to constantly improve his cultivation during the Chaos Great Enlightenment stage. This was similar to the Chaos Tongxian stage and the Chaos Void stage. It couldn't be rushed. After descending to the depths of the ground, Xiaolingyu took out the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron and entered it. There weren't many ways for Xiaolingyu to increase his strength. He could only think of one thing, and that was to digest Biao Zhou's inheritance. Biao Zhou was a powerful existence that could contend against Fu Shi Tenshi. Digesting his inheritance would definitely increase Xiaolingyu's strength by a lot. Although Biao Zhou's inheritance was mainly a formation path inheritance, if the formation path was used to the extreme, its power would be terrifying. Digesting Biao Zhou's inheritance wasn't difficult, all that was needed was time. Moreover, Xiaolingyu was now a rank 8. He could refine the throne, but the speed was a little slow. Occasionally, when he felt tired, Xiaolingyu would stop and give pointers to Qing Xian and Yi Qiu. He wouldn't stay in one place for too long. He would change places to cultivate from time to time. Sometimes, he would enter some cities to buy some materials. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. With Xiaolingyu's help, Yi Qiu had successfully entered the 6th Revolution Chaos Tongxian stage. As for Qing Xian, with the help of Xiaolingyu and the God Emperor Su Ling, she had also reached the God Monarch stage. Yi Qiu's cultivation of the 9 Revolution Chaos formula was finally on the right track. Xiaolingyu didn't hesitate to send the Sha Mei's Saint God's true spirit into his disciple's body. Yi Qiu had the yin-yang sacred body, and the Sha Mei clan also focused on the cultivation of yin and yang attributes. Thus, Yi Qiu and the Saint God's true spirit didn't clash in attributes. It wasn't that Xiaolingyu didn't need the Saint God's true spirit, but that the Sha Mei clan's Saint God's true spirit couldn't fuse into his body. Chapter 658. Xiaolingyu had seen great storms and experienced countless dangers. Although strange old man Dugu's heaven sword technique was very powerful, it only made Xiaolingyu feel a little troublesome. It was not enough to make him feel fear from the bottom of his heart. He felt that as long as he reached the middle stage of Chaos Enlightenment, he should be able to deal with strange old man Dugu's 6th level of Heaven Sword technique. He had not seen the power of the 7th level of Heaven Sword technique, but conservatively speaking, he would need to reach the late stage of Chaos Enlightenment before he would not be afraid of the 7th level of Heaven Sword technique. Fortunately, Xiaolingyu could still complete the sacrificial refining of the seat and give himself another powerful magic treasure. With this, he might be able to deal with strange old man Dugu's Heaven Sword technique. Strange old man Dugu needed countless years for every step he took, but Xiaolingyu's progress had always been very fast. Therefore, Xiaolingyu had reason to believe that strange old man Dugu would not be able to maintain his advantage over him for too long. After all, Liao Zhou's array formation inheritance was the lifelong knowledge of an expert in the late stage of heaven ascension. After completely digesting this inheritance, Xiaolingyu would be able to advance to the middle stage of Chaos Enlightenment. Array formation was a very special and broad and profound knowledge. If one wanted to achieve a higher level of attainment in array formation, one not only needed talent and comprehension, but also very good patience and perseverance to be able to endure the loneliness of boring calculations for a long time. At this moment, Xiaolingyu suddenly felt that the people on earth said, one can only rise above others after suffering the most hardships. It was very reasonable. If not for being able to endure hardships, Xiaolingyu would not have been able to achieve what he had today. After all, it was just an inheritance. To put it bluntly, it was a memory content that was preserved through special means. No matter how large the content was, Xiaolingyu, who had reached the Chaos Enlightenment stage, could quickly digest it. Xiaolingyu did not understand much of the content inside at the moment, but it did not matter as long as he could engrave it deeply in his mind. The so-called digesting of Liao Zhou's inheritance was actually to carefully sort out the large amount of information left behind by Liao Zhou, comprehend its essence, and master its foundation. This was good. It was easy to say, but it took Xiaoling Yu 1,000 years to sort out the content, and a full 3,000 years to comprehend the essence. On the basis of comprehending the essence, it only took him a few hundred years to master the basics of the array Dao. Just as Xiaoling Yu expected, after digesting Biao Zhou's inheritance, his realm leaped to the middle stage of primal chaos Great Enlightenment. Comprehending the knowledge of a heaven-connecting late-stage expert was not something that anyone could have. This opportunity allowed Xiaoling Yu to gain many benefits in a short time. Even though it was just the basics, it was still broad and profound. After mastering this part of the content, Xiaoling Yu had the prerequisites to continuously improve her skills in array formations. Xiaoling Yu's current cultivation level was far beyond that of an ordinary emperor god. Although he was not as strong as a saint god expert, he could still set up a mid-grade god array with a wave of his hand after some training. Those who had profound attainments in formations were definitely experts in the Tao of restrictions. Most of the powerful formations would contain countless advanced restrictive spells. Formations might not be able to be quickly used in actual combat, but restrictions could. Many powerful seals actually contained restrictions within them. Biao Zhou had mastered an extremely powerful formation and restrictive spell that could be quickly activated. It was called the Illusory Sky Restriction Formation. The Illusory Sky Restriction Formation itself did not have much offensive power, but it could be combined with a cultivator's seal attack. By fusing it into the seal, it could increase the seal's offensive or defensive power. This Illusory Sky Restriction Formation required the cultivator to fuse countless illusory formations and restrictive spells into the seal at the same time as the seal was formed. The more advanced the illusory formations and restrictive spells that were fused into the seal, the stronger the seal's power would be. However, it was not easy to activate a powerful seal. It required a period of time to form the seal and prepare. If the seal was fused with illusory formations and restrictive spells, it would definitely take a lot of time in the preparation stage, and the enemy might not give you this time. With the guidance of Biao Zhou's inheritance, it was not difficult to fuse the Illusory Sky Restriction Formation into the seal. To Xiaoling Yu, the biggest difficulty was to reduce the preparation time. In other words, Xiaoling Yu had to fuse the most effective restrictive spells into his seal in the shortest time possible to maximize the seal's offensive power. Xiaoling Yu did not practice many seals. The one he was most proficient in was naturally the Primal Chaos Seal. Now that his cultivation level was much higher, Xiaoling Yu could instantly activate the Primal Chaos Seal. However, if he fused illusory formations and restrictive spells into the seal at the same time as he formed the seal, Xiaoling Yu could not even activate it once, not to mention the long preparation time required. I can't be anxious. How can I easily master Biao Zhou's unique skill? I'd better study it slowly. Xiaoling Yu calmed himself down and continued to practice his technique in hand speed. Almost 1,000 years had passed. Xiaoling Yu actually used such a long time to familiarize himself with the illusory formations and restrictive spells into the Primal Chaos Seal and blast it out. When Xiaoling Yu saw the black hole that was blasted out by the Primal Chaos Seal, he felt a little comforted. His efforts were not in vain. The power of this move is almost comparable to the attack of an ordinary divine weapon. However, it seems to be a little lacking compared to the 6th level of the Heaven Sword technique of the old monster Dugu. Moreover, I have to prepare for nearly 10 breaths before I can use it. It's a little too long. After Xiaoling Yu judged himself, he put away the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron again and jumped to the ground. He habitually looked at the foodie in the spirit beast pouch. Seeing that it was still sleeping soundly without any signs of waking up, Xiaoling Yu could only helplessly smile bitterly. When it swallowed the countless corpses of the experts on the stone steps and advanced to the late-stage God Emperor, the foodie had slept for tens of thousands of years. Although the corpse of the ancient late-stage Heaven Passage expert Biao Zhou had been weathered for countless years, the energy it contained was probably not worse than that of an ordinary saint god. It was reasonable for the foodie to sleep for a long time. Although Xiaoling Yu could wake up the foodie, it was better not to disturb it unless it was a last resort. After all, this fellow's cultivation relied on sleeping. Originally, Xiaoling Yu was preparing to change a place to continue cultivating. However, after the tubular divine weapon teleported, before he could find a suitable place to cultivate, he received a message from Guanywei. Guanywei transmitted, Boss Xiao, a subordinate brother sent a message saying that a woman who looks very similar to sister-in-law Miaoing has been detained by the family Jiang and brought into Yong'an City. The fact that the message was sent proved that Guanywei was not far from here, and Xiaoling Yu knew that this place was within Yong'an's territory. Without asking Guanywei, Xiaoling Yu activated the divine weapon once again and arrived outside Yong'an City in an instant. Yong'an was the largest territory closest to the mountain clan. Now that the news of the calamity had spread throughout the divine realm, all the cultivators in Yong'an were taking refuge everywhere. However, as the main city of the divine realm, Yong'an City was more lively than before. In the face of the calamity, many cultivators felt that hiding in the main city was an extremely wise choice. After all, there were countless experts in the main city. Even if the sky fell, these experts would be the first to hold it up. If even the experts in Yong'an City couldn't withstand the calamity, the cultivators in Yong'an didn't know where to hide to be truly safe. In the southern district of Yong'an City, where the family Jiang courtyard was located, it was as quiet as ever. No matter how crowded other places were, the cultivators in Yong'an City didn't dare to make a ruckus here. Perhaps because there were too many cultivators in the city recently, in front of the family Jiang courtyard's gate, there were 2 rows of guards holding long swords in their hands. All of them had the strength of God Monarch stage, and one of them was even a God King stage expert. Using a God King stage expert to guard the gate, perhaps only a rich and powerful family like the family Jiang could do so. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu was standing at the gate of the family Jiang courtyard. She politely presented her name card and asked to see the family Jiang's head, Jiang Xingye. After all, Xiaoling Yu had a good relationship with Jiang Xingye's 2 daughters. Xiaoling Yu didn't want her relationship with the family Jiang to be too strained. The God King stage guard received Xiaoling Yu's name card and then entered the family Jiang courtyard. But after a while, not only did he not invite Xiaoling Yu in, but he also brought out a large number of family Jiang experts and surrounded Xiaoling Yu with a serious expression. Just when Xiaoling Yu was frowning, Jiang Xingye brought 3 God Emperor stage experts to the gate of the family Jiang courtyard. Xiaoling Yu, you killed my family Jiang's God King. My family Jiang didn't cause you any trouble, so why are you here again? Jiang Xingye pretended to be angry. Xiaoling Yu knew very well that the family Jiang didn't cause trouble for him and the Hua men for many years. First, they were afraid of his strength. Second, it had something to do with the Jiang Wanhua sisters. However, he also knew that Jiang Xingye wouldn't cause trouble for him because of a few God Kings. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to verify one thing. Xiaoling Yu cupped her fists and shook them. What is it? Jiang Xingye asked in a deep voice. Not only Jiang Xingye, but the 3 God Emperor stage experts also knew that Xiaoling Yu wasn't someone the family Jiang could easily provoke. The battle between Xiaoling Yu and the Chao clan experts at Floating Duckweed Bay had already reached the ears of the family Jiang's experts. Xiaoling Yu didn't dawdle. He immediately displayed Miao Ying's image and said, Did the family Jiang kidnap this woman? Her name is Miaoing. Jiang Xingye frowned and asked, Are you acquainted with her? Xiaoling Yu calmly replied, She's my wife. Jiang Xingye's thick eyebrows furrowed even tighter. He knew that Xiaoling Yu had fought with the Chao clan because of a woman. There was no point in denying it. Since Xiaoling Yu had come looking for him, he must have received reliable information. Jiang Xingye also knew that Xiaoling Yu's Hua Men was an organization that gathered information very quickly. She is indeed in my family Jiang. Hearing Jiang Xingye admit it, Xiaoling Yu's face darkened. However, the family Jiang didn't kidnap her because we wanted to be enemies with Your Excellency. In fact, we didn't even know that she had any relationship with Your Excellency. Chapter 659. Since my wife is in family Jiang, can you send her out? Xiaoling Yu asked. Jiang Xingye and the other experts of family Jiang looked troubled. However, after a moment of silence, Jiang Xingye nodded and said, Of course you can. Jiang Xingye wanted to say no, but if this had been millions of years ago, he might have dared to say so. But now, he really didn't dare. Family Jiang might seem powerful, but it was far from the Chao clan. Even the Chao clan had been tormented to such an extent, so how could family Jiang have the courage to make an enemy out of someone as strong as Xiaoling Yu? Most importantly, Jiang Xingye could tell from Xiaoling Yu's way of doing things that Xiaoling Yu was not someone to be trifled with. Even though he seemed amiable now, only the heavens knew when he would explode in anger. Jiang Xingye was able to sit so firmly in the position of family Jiang's head not only because he was powerful, but also because he was very shrewd and had a unique vision. Jiang Xingye had long guessed that Xiaoling Yu would definitely become a popular figure in the realm of the gods in the future, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Jiang Xingye also knew that the reason Xiaoling Yu was still polite to family Jiang was not because he was afraid of family Jiang's power, but because his two daughters were friends with Xiaoling Yu. However, when Xiaoling Yu said that the woman was his wife, Jiang Xingye was slightly surprised and sighed. It was also because that woman was Xiaoling Yu's wife that Jiang Xingye resolutely agreed to let her out even though he was in a very difficult situation. The other god emperors of family Jiang frowned slightly at the decision of family Jiang's head, but they didn't say anything to stop it. Family Jiang was powerless against Xiaoling Yu. Even if he could contend with Xiaoling Yu, the calamity was imminent. No one would fight to the death with a strong enemy at this juncture. Under Jiang Xingye's instructions, a god emperor accompanying the family Jiang personally returned to the family Jiang's courtyard. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he brought out the woman who had been imprisoned by the family Jiang. The woman wore a red gauze dress, and her beautiful black hair was draped over her shoulders like a waterfall. She had bright eyes, red lips, fair skin, and a proud figure. She was one of the wives Xiaoling Yu yearned for day and night, Miaoling. When Miaoling saw Xiaoling Yu, she was stunned at first. Then, with a frosty expression on her face, she immediately bloomed into a beautiful smile and jumped over. Xiaoling Yu also had a smile on her face. She caught Miaoling and held her in her arms. She even kissed her fiercely as if there was no one around. And this scene was coincidentally seen by the Jiang Lanhua sisters who had just returned home. Now that the Jiang Lanhua sisters had both broken through to the early stage God Emperor realm, Chuiyu allowed them to leave the mountain and return home. Just now, they were still 5,000 kilometers away from Yong'an City, but they received a message from their father asking them to return home quickly. Thus, they rushed back at this moment. Jiang Xingye asked his two daughters to return quickly because he was afraid that Xiaoling Yu would act against the family Jiang. "Big sister, look, I told you this brat is not a good person. You didn't believe me." Jiang Lanchang pointed at Xiaoling Yu and said angrily. Jiang Lanhua only frowned. She did not say anything. She brought Jiang Lanhua to her father. This time, after successfully breaking through to the God Emperor realm, Jiang Lanhua's realm had improved greatly. Especially after overcoming her heart demon, she was able to see things through. Congratulations to the two of you for successfully breaking through to the God Emperor realm. Xiaoling Yu saw the arrival of the Jiang Lanhua sisters and immediately let go of Miaoling and said to them with a smile. "Are you mocking us?" Jiang Lanchang snorted coldly. "I am sincere." Xiaoling Yu shrugged. "Forget it. If you were sincere, you could have said that the night demons had come to Yong'an with sincerity." Jiang Lanchang said sarcastically. "This little lass really needs to be taught a lesson." Miaoling saw the other party making things difficult for her husband and could not help but interject. Miaoling was not as cautious as Qing Xian. When she was in the devil realm, she dared to love and hate. She did things in an unreasonable manner. It was the same in the deity world. "I do need to be taught a lesson. If you have the ability, come and teach me a lesson. You have not even reached the deity king realm, yet you dare to speak so arrogantly here." Jiang Lanchang said unhappily. "Ha, I am anxious." "Don't be anxious too. You are many years stronger than me." Miaoling smiled casually. She was not angry because of the other party's contempt. Xiaoling Yu used her divine sense to check Miao Ying's body and found that she was fine. She did not want Miaoling and Jiang Wanchang to continue arguing, so she cupped her fists and said to Family Jiang, "Thank you for your mercy, Family Head Jiang. Goodbye. You still say that I am anxious? Soon, you will be anxious too. Let me tell you, this guy surnamed Xiao is not a good person. He already has a wife." Jiang Wanchang did not wait for Xiaoling Yu to turn around and added, "Haha, other than me, my husband has not only one wife, but two." Miaoling smiled sweetly and said, "The three of us are like sisters. We will not be jealous of each other. Are you envious? However, I can represent the other two sisters to welcome you into our big family. The premise is that you can't be so petty, haha." Xiaoling Yu gently pinched Miao Ying's smooth and tender hand and said softly, "What are you competing with her for?" When Miaoling saw that Jiang Wanchang was so angry that her body trembled, she could not help but laugh. Her laughter was so beautiful that it could be called a flowery flower. Jiang Wanchang was furious and scolded, "The two of you are serving the same husband, and you are so proud of it. You are really shameless." Miaoling still had a smile on her face and said, "What's wrong with serving the same husband? In this world, those who are capable can have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Those who are not can't even marry one. Our husband is a good man with an indomitable spirit. To be able to gain his favor is the blessing of 100 lifetimes. Didn't your family Jiang call me a demoness before and want to kill me? Didn't you obediently let me go now? Don't bicker with me. If you have the ability, go marry a man who is stronger than my husband, and then mock me." After all, Jiang Wanchang was still young. Even if her cultivation was stronger than Miaoling, in reality, she had less experience than Miaoling. Naturally, she was at a disadvantage in bickering. However, the men of the family Jiang could not interrupt. After all, this was a bickering between 2 women, not a battle of magical powers. Jiang Wanhua could interrupt, but she was not in the mood to argue with others. Jiang Wanchang was speechless. In the narrow sense of the God realm, there were countless elites, but there was no one who could be compared with Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu now had the strength comparable to the Xingqian. Who in the narrow sense of the God realm had such strength? And those Xingqian experts, which one of them was not an old monster who had cultivated for many years? Even Jiang Wanhua and her father, Jiang Xingye, had to admit that Xiaoling Yu was the most powerful and most promising elite in the narrow sense of the God realm. Moreover, he was not just one of them. What a pity! If I could take him as my son-in-law, even if I had to marry both my daughters to him, it would not be impossible. Unfortunately, he already has a wife. Jiang Xingye sighed silently in his heart. In the past, when he knew of Xiaoling Yu's existence, and when he knew that Jiang Wanhua was interested in Xiaoling Yu, it was not that he did not think of taking Xiaoling Yu as his son-in-law. However, at that time, Xiaoling Yu had just shown his talent and was not worthy of the family Zhang's attention. Therefore, he wanted to wait a little longer. He never thought that this wait would lead to such a shocking result. Goodbye. Xiaoling Yu shook his clenched fists again, then pulled Miaoling and flew away. Humph. I don't believe that there is no one in the God realm who is stronger than that surnamed Xiao. Jiang Wanchang stomped her foot and said to her father, "Father, I want to get married. You have to help me find someone stronger than that surnamed Xiao." Jiang Xingye had a difficult expression and said, "Chang'er, don't make trouble. Even if there is someone stronger than Xiaoling Yu in the God realm, I'm afraid there is no one in the narrow sense of the God realm where we humans and demons live. If you want to find someone, you can only go to the heaven-piercing sacred island." Jiang Wanchang did not hesitate and said, "Then go to the heaven-piercing sacred island." Jiang Xingye was surprised at first, then smiled and said, "Really?" "Yes." Jiang Wanchang said firmly. "Haha, good. Father will arrange it for the 2 of you in a few days." Jiang Xingye laughed heartily in response. In fact, he had long intended to send his 2 daughters to Heavenly Saint Island. Now that the calamity was coming, although his 2 daughters had broken through to the God Emperor stage, in the face of such a calamity, even God Emperors did not have much ability to protect themselves. He did not dare to let his two daughters take the risk, so sending them out of the narrow sense of the divine world was his first choice. The Shin god and the patriarchs of the various large regions could not leave the narrow sense of the god realm for the sake of escaping, but sending their children out was still possible. Jiang Xingye originally did not know how to persuade his two stubborn daughters, but now it seemed that he did not have to worry about it anymore. Now that the calamity is coming, we are already God Emperor experts. How can we just leave? Jiang Lanyu objected. Can you let Chang'er go to the heaven-piercing sacred island alone? Jiang Xingye asked. Jiang Lanyu fell silent. Husband, what is your cultivation now? You can actually make those family Jiang experts fear you. Miaoing asked curiously. 8th revolution, I can fight against the Shin god. Xiaolingyu said truthfully. Isn't this a little too abnormal? Although Miaoing thought for a moment, she could only use these two unpleasant words to describe it. You are not bad yourself. Not long after ascending, you have already reached the late stage of the god monarch realm. Xiaolingyu praised Miaoing as she scratched the bridge of her nose. After I arrived in the god realm, I found a faster cultivation method. Miaoing smiled proudly and said, Do you still remember my blood flute? It was destroyed when I was crossing the divine tribulation. However, my clan has a secret method to refine that blood flute again. After I arrived at the divine realm, I used that secret method to refine a blood flute for myself. However, I unexpectedly discovered that during the refining process, a portion of the energy absorbed by the blood flute could be transferred to its owner, which is me. Chapter 660. Actually, I didn't intend to start a massacre. Originally, I went to the floating Su mountain range to hunt those demonic beasts to refine the blood flute. However, I didn't expect that I would always be ambushed by some ill-intentioned mercenaries. There was even one time where I was seriously injured and almost killed by them. After a long time, I felt that there was no need to be polite even to those human race cultivators. My own strength was the absolute truth. What should be killed and what shouldn't be killed, I couldn't be bothered to differentiate. If I killed them, I killed them. Miaoing explained with a slightly overbearing and cold tone. Then you still have to be careful. There are countless capable people in the realm of the gods. Experts are as common as clouds. If you go around killing indiscriminately, you will eventually meet an expert. This time, if I didn't receive the news, the family Jiang wouldn't have let you off so easily. Xiaolingyu said with a smile. Although the family Jiang called me a female devil and wanted to kill me, after they kidnapped me to the family Jiang's courtyard, they only locked me up and used words to threaten me. They actually wanted me to rely on the family Jiang. They even said that the family Jiang could provide me with convenience so that I could become an expert at the fastest speed. Miaoing said indifferently. Then why didn't you agree? This is a good thing. With your situation, it seems that you didn't have a better choice. After all, you didn't know that I would come to save you and that I could save you. Xiaolingyu asked. It's not that I didn't agree. It's just that I was still hesitating. I wanted to raise a few more conditions that were beneficial to me. In the end, before I could think of the conditions, you arrived first. Miaoing lazily waved her arm. Only in front of Xiaolingyu would she show such a gentle side. She was still lying in Xiaolingyu's arms, letting Xiaolingyu touch her body as they flew. That chick looked like she was jealous just now. Miaoying's slender jade-like hand stroked Xiaolingyu's chin. What nonsense are you talking about? Xiaolingyu pinched Miaoying's perky but hard, unwilling to admit it. If he didn't care, why would he be so angry? You didn't see that little girl. Just now, her eyes were almost spewing fire. Miaoing proudly analyzed, but did not have the slightest posture of a punitive expedition. Xiaolingyu already has 3 wives. Miaoying, Anya, and Qing Xian are actually used to serving one husband. Moreover, before they ascended, they often had sex with Xiaolingyu in the same bed. Therefore, the 3 of them can let go of the matter between men and women. At least, they will not react as strongly as before. Don't think that her cultivation is already at the God Emperor stage. In reality, she's still a child. She's not mature yet, so it's normal for her to get angry easily. Don't drag me into this. Xiao Lingyu explained calmly. I think that with her temper and her family background, she will definitely be very unconvinced. Maybe she will really find a man stronger than you and marry him. At that time, don't regret it. Miaoling was a devil Dao cultivator, and her words carried a bit of unruliness in her demonic nature. What do I have to regret? Besides, unless she is willing to marry those old monsters of the holy god stage, in the narrow sense of the god realm where the human and demon races live, it is almost impossible to find a human race elite stronger than me. Xiao Lingyu said confidently. So you have nothing to fear. Miaoling laughed even more happily. The reason why she laughed was not because of the reaction of Jiang Lanyu and her sister, but because she was finally reunited with her husband. With the three of you, how would I dare to covet other women? Xiao Lingyu said jokingly. Oh right, have you found Anya and Qing Xian? Miaoling suddenly asked. Xiao Lingyu listened, took out the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron, and invited Qing Xian out. Sister Miaoling. Sister Qing Xian. The two women with peerless appearances, like a pair of little girls, cheered and hugged each other. Seeing his wife get along so well, Xiao Lingyu also showed a knowing smile. What more can a man ask for when he has done this for him? After inviting Miaoling and Qing Xian into the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron, he took out the tubular sacred tool, and with a greater teleportation, Xiao Lingyu was far away from Yangon City. Qing Xian was working hard to cultivate and digest the benefits brought by the God Emperor Hollow Spirit. Xiao Lingyu felt that he couldn't favor one and discriminate against the other, so he also wanted to help Miaoling. After thinking for a while, Xiao Lingyu and Miaoling opened up an absolutely secret space in the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron and began to discuss. At first, it was still a decent consideration, but after Xiao Lingyu touched Miao Ying's body for a while, Miao Ying's face flushed and she let out a slight moan. Xiao Lingyu pounced on her like a hungry wolf, then took off her clothes and thrust his spear straight in. After a long time, the real discussion began. Miaoling laid lazily in Xiao Lingyu's arms and drew circles on his chest with her finger. After coming to the God realm for so long, he had rarely tasted a woman. Although his cultivation level was rather high, and he had even experienced the void and lightning realm, he had never deliberately suppressed his desires and emotions. After seeing his own wife, he naturally released all the feelings and desires that had been suppressed for many years. Previously, Qing Xian had been tortured by him to an unbearable extent. If I want to improve quickly, it's actually very simple. I don't need any God Emperor Hollow Spirit or Saint God True Spirit. Husband only needs to take me to kill some cultivators or demonic beasts with higher realms than me. I'll use my clan's secret technique to condense the blood flute, and my cultivation will naturally skyrocket. Miaoling said in a soft and gentle voice. There won't be any side effects, right? Xiao Lingyu asked with concern. There won't be. My clan's secret technique was passed down by an ancient expert of my clan. It's absolutely safe. Miaoling said with certainty. Even if it's a secret technique, it's impossible to be absolutely safe. Although the ancient expert's divine ability is exquisite, to continuously increase one's cultivation by such a large margin, I'm afraid that no one will believe that there won't be any side effects. Xiao Lingyu said cautiously. My clan's secret technique combined with my clan's special physique. Don't be unconvinced. That glutton of yours has been rapidly increasing his cultivation. Have you seen any side effects? Miaoling said with a smile as she lightly patted Xiao Lingyu's chest with her white and tender little hand. Thinking of his glutton, Xiao Lingyu flipped over and pressed Miaoling down. He pointed the tip of his spear at the entrance of the Peach Blossom Cave and said, You heaven-defying fellows shouldn't even exist. Watch how your husband takes care of you. He leaned forward slightly. Miaoling let out a delicate moan and begged for mercy. Husband, next time, since they had already entered, how could Xiao Lingyu give up? Naturally, another round of lovemaking ensued. It wasn't until Miaoling was panting and sweating profusely that Xiaolingyu finally stopped and obediently lay down without moving. When I was cultivating in the devil realm, that blood flute was already my clan's inherited magical treasure. I didn't need to refine it. At that time, I thought that it was refined from some special high-grade material. I didn't know that it could be refined again and continuously improved. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I would have long become the #1 expert of the devil realm. Miaoling said regretfully as she pressed her charming face against Xiaolingyu's chest. It's not too late to know now. Xiaolingyu replied and then said, if you were too powerful back then, wouldn't I not have had the chance to subdue a female devil like you? Since Miaoling was so sure that there was no problem with her clan's secret technique, Xiaolingyu naturally wouldn't be stingy with his labor. Then, he brought Miaoling to the floating Su mountain range. While helping Miaoling to hunt high-grade demonic beasts, Xiaolingyu was also constantly practicing the new version of the primal chaos seal. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. He felt that he couldn't shorten the preparation time to form the new version of the primal chaos seal by just relying on practice. It was better to practice more. The demonic beasts and cultivators that Miaoling had hunted before were all not very strong. Therefore, even if Miaoling had mastered such a powerful secret technique, her progress couldn't be too fast. But with Xiaolingyu's help, God Monarch and God King stage demonic beasts were almost easy to catch. Occasionally, she would encounter a God Emperor stage demonic beast, but in front of Xiaolingyu, they couldn't resist at all. Naturally, her cultivation progress was 1,000 miles a day. However, when Miaoling used that secret technique, the power was really not small. It looked very frightening. She waved her white hand and a bloody light appeared from her sleeve. That bloody light first turned into a bloody flute, and then it turned into a sea of blood. Accompanied by Miaoying's hands constantly forming special seals, and her mouth chanting obscure incantations, the sea of blood constantly fluctuated with strange fluctuations. In just an instant, all the life in the area covered by the sea of blood withered. Miaoling then threw the demonic beasts killed by Xiaolingyu into the sea of blood. The sea of blood began to roll and roar, and the corpses of the demonic beasts that were thrown in were constantly corroded. First, the flesh and blood melted, and then the bones disappeared. However, the sea of blood seemed to only be able to absorb a part of the special energy of the demonic beasts. As for the cultivation power and soul power, it was quickly refined and transformed by the sea of blood, and then unceasingly poured into Miaoying's palm. It was likely that only demonic cultivators could get used to such a strange practice. Even Xiaolingyu, who was used to seeing blood, felt his scalp go numb. Although there were no side effects, every time Miaoling absorbed the energy sent by the sea of blood, she would immediately go into seclusion. Moreover, when she was in seclusion, her whole body would be shrouded in bloody light, as if 10,000 ants were gnawing at her flesh and blood, and her soul would constantly explode. Originally, it was a quiet seclusion, but Miaoying's body was trembling uncontrollably. Her expression was one of incomparable pain, and her teeth were constantly chattering. Her whole body was drenched in sweat, but it also emitted a bloody stench. Xiaolingyu, who was guarding Miaoling from the side, felt his heart palpitate and his heart ache. Although it was a shortcut to increasing one's strength, it did not come without paying any price. Xiaolingyu did not personally experience such pain, but he also felt that only a demonic cultivator like Miaoling, who had suffered a lot and had a tough state of mind, could bear it. Ordinary women would not make such a choice. Miaoying's breakthrough in seclusion took only 3 years. When she woke up, her cultivation was only a step away from the God Emperor stage. Chapter 661. Miaoying's blood-colored flute was also extremely mystical. It could continuously devour energy to refine itself and improve its quality. When they entered the floating Su mountain range, the blood-colored flute was merely a mid-grade deity tool. After absorbing several God King demonic beasts, it became a high-grade deity tool. After devouring 2 more God Emperor demonic beasts, it became a supreme-grade deity tool. Xiaolingyu was very fond of such a magic treasure. If it could devour 2 saint god experts, wouldn't it become a saint god? Most importantly, this blood-colored flute was the most suitable magic treasure for Meowing. No matter how high its quality was, Meowing could use it like an extension of her arm, and she could use it to display its greatest might at will. To a certain extent, this would allow Meowing's strength to become even stronger. Now that the calamity was about to arrive, Meowing and Qing Xian had been found. Only Anya was left. Anya and Xiaolingyu had been married for the longest time. She was also the one with the deepest feelings for Xiaolingyu. Although Anya was the youngest of the three women, she was the most broad-minded. She was deeply respected by Meowing and Qing Xian. Xiaolingyu brought Anya to find two more God Emperor demonic beasts in the floating Su mountain range. After that, they left the floating Su mountain range to find Guanywei. Using the great teleportation divine ability of the tubular Saint tool, Xiaolingyu could not only make it difficult for old monster Dugu to find him, but also easily find Guanywei. However, in order to prevent Guanywei from being followed by old monster Dugu, Xiaolingyu would first send a message before meeting up with Guanywei. Guanywei had once made a soul oath to never betray Xiaolingyu. Even if he was suppressed by old monster Dugu, he would never lead Xiaolingyu to old monster Dugu. Boss Xiao, we've tried our best. We've been doing nothing but searching for Anya's sister-in-law all over the world. Unfortunately, there's still no news. Guanywei said with a troubled expression. Don't be too anxious about this matter. Just do your best. Xiaolingyu was a little disappointed, but she wouldn't blame the Huamen's disciples. Boss Xiao, the calamity is coming. How should we, the Huamen, deal with it? Guanywei asked with concern. The Huamen have a large number of people, and they are scattered all over the narrow God realm. It's very difficult to gather them. Even if I have the ability to protect them, it's impossible to gather all of them in front of me in a short period of time. I can only resign myself to fate, Xiaolingyu said helplessly. It's said that the mountain tribe is at the center of this catastrophe. Even if we're affected, it won't be too serious. I'm not sure if that's the case, Guanywei said worriedly. Everyone knows very little about the catastrophe. We'll have to wait and see what the exact situation is. Right now, the mountain tribe has already fled to the territories of the neighboring tribes. I'm guessing that they'll bring the catastrophe to the other tribes as well. We can't let our guard down. It's best that we prepare a place to hide. We have a lot of God crystals now. Go buy some high-level defensive treasures. Everyone, go down as deep as you can, Xiaolingyu said with a shake of her head. The Huamen doesn't have a headquarters. Most of the Huamen's disciples are cultivators with low cultivation. Even if they die in the catastrophe, as long as we have enough God crystals, we can quickly collect another batch. This catastrophe won't affect us too much. However, if everyone hides, it'll be very troublesome to find sister-in-law, Guanywei said. Yes, the catastrophe was coming. He believed that all the cultivators in the narrow God realm were thinking about how to avoid it. If the Huamen's cultivators hid, no one would look for Anya. If Anya also hid, it would be even more difficult to find her. However, although Xiaolingyu was anxious, he was still very assured about Anya's safety. Anya had already cultivated the sword Nascent Soul. As long as the unforgiving godly sword wasn't destroyed, her life wouldn't be in danger. Xiaolingyu hadn't been able to determine the grade of the unforgiving godly sword back in the three realms. He only knew that it was slightly more powerful than a supreme-grade god weapon. Now, he could guess that the quality of the sword refined by an ancient sword god was probably not inferior to an ordinary divine weapon. Are those demonic beasts still obedient? Xiaolingyu asked again. They're fine. They've already recognized their master. Naturally, they don't dare to disobey. However, Guanywei hesitated for a moment, then said, the dozen or so black divine pigs were taken away by that old woman. Their whereabouts are unknown. Xiaolingyu frowned slightly. He told Guanywei to take care of himself before he teleported away again. It's time to talk to that old woman. She doesn't seem to like old monster Dugu. Perhaps she'll be very willing to deal with that old monster with me. With that thought in mind, Xiaolingyu continued to teleport. Every time he arrived at a place, he would stop to sense the location of the dozen or so black divine pigs. After teleporting more than 20 times, Xiaoling Yu had already sensed the approximate location of the dozen or so black divine pigs. Then, he used the tubular divine weapon to fly for a while before he arrived at a large snowy mountain in the depths of a mountain range. This mountain range was also a famous mountain range in the narrow sense of the god realm. Its scale was even larger than the floating Su mountain range. Many demon experts would often appear in this mountain range. This mountain range was the territory of the demon race. Human cultivators basically didn't dare to enter this mountain range as casually as they did the floating Su mountain range. Even if they were human experts, they had to be careful or seek permission from the demon experts. Xiaoling Yu had just flown to the side of this large snowy mountain when the space beside him suddenly fluctuated. Then, the old woman appeared. "You finally found me." The old woman didn't seem to be surprised by Xiaoling Yu's arrival at all. Instead, she seemed to be looking forward to it. "Senior, I've made you wait for a long time." "Ha!" Xiaoling Yu laughed. "You don't have to call me senior. I've heard about the matter between you and the Chao clan. With your current strength, you can talk to me as an equal. Just call me fellow Taoist." The old woman waved her hand. "If fellow Taoist says so, then you must have something to ask of me." Xiaoling Yu didn't stand on ceremony and immediately changed the way he addressed her. "I do have something to ask of you. I'm sure you know what it is." The old woman nodded and said, "Now that the Hua men have begun to take shape, we don't have to be afraid of strong enemies. Furthermore, I don't need your children to restrain you. Therefore, getting to know you as their master is as easy as lifting a finger." Xiaoling Yu said generously. "What are the conditions?" The old woman was very straightforward. "The conditions are very simple. When the calamity comes, we'll take care of each other. If we ever encounter that old man Dugu, I hope fellow Taoist will be willing to fight alongside me." Xiaoling Yu said without beating around the bush. "No problem." The old woman agreed without hesitation. It seemed that this was what she wanted to say to Xiaoling Yu. Then, under the old woman's lead, Xiaoling Yu saw the dozen or so black divine pigs and removed their master status, allowing them to regain their freedom. "I know you're unwilling to give up on the ice soul heavenly silkworm, but it is indeed a pet I took in when I was in the cultivation world. Later on, I ascended to the devil realm, and it ascended to the devil realm." The beginning of their meeting was very good, so Xiaoling Yu went deeper into the topic. The main reason he came to find the old woman this time was actually the ice soul heavenly silkworm. The old woman narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiaoling Yu. Suddenly, she said, "There's only one condition." "Speak." Xiaoling Yu said indifferently. "If we join forces to kill that old man Dugu in the future, I have the first choice of the treasures on him. In other words, I have to choose one first." The old woman said. Xiaoling Yu hesitated for a moment. His reason told him that there must be a problem. That old man Dugu must have something that even a holy god expert coveted. However, Xiaoling Yu really couldn't think of what old man Dugu wanted. Secondly, he didn't lack any treasures. Thirdly, he was very concerned about the ice soul heavenly silkworm. Therefore, after pondering for a moment, he nodded and agreed to this condition. The old woman's expression suddenly relaxed. When Xiaoling Yu removed her children's master status, her expression didn't change so much. Xiao Bing is in the cold pond at the top of the mountain. Then, the old woman took Xiaoling Yu and flew to the top of the Great Snow Mountain. This Great Snow Mountain was not lower than Kongrong Mountain where Chuiyu was. The ice and snow at the top of the Great Snow Mountain was very thick, and the temperature was very low. Moreover, the space pressure was very strong. Cultivators below the Divine King stage couldn't climb up at all. At the top of the Great Snow Mountain, there was a cold pond. Standing by the side, one could feel the oppressive cold air. Xiaoling Yu had the chaotic phantom fire, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of this cold. However, most cold ponds would be frozen on the surface, but this one only emitted cold air, which made Xiaoling Yu feel very strange. The water of the cold pond was very clear, but it was bottomless. There is an ice cave below. It was originally the cave of a super divine beast, Ice Chelan. However, now that the catastrophe is coming, it needs to return to the Chelan clan's encampment. Secondly, I paid a big price for it to transfer this place to me. Xiao Bing is cultivating here at a rapid pace, and his progress is very fast. In the future, this cold pond and Xiao Bing will belong to you. The old woman pointed to the cold pond and explained. Then, she said, I hope that Xiao Daoyu can keep your promise today. If you can really kill old man Dugu in the future, don't worry. Although I am not a very generous person, I am definitely not a person who goes back on his words. Xiao Lingyu interrupted. After saying that, he jumped into the cold pond. I have to go and contact the other demon clan experts first. I will come and find you in a few days. Xiao Lingyu had just jumped into the water when the old woman's voice transmission reached his ears. The depth of the cold pond seemed to be similar to the height of the mountain, and the lower one went, the colder it became. At the bottom of the cold pond, even Xiao Lingyu, who had the chaotic phantom fire, couldn't help but shiver. After looking around, Xiao Lingyu saw a cave that seemed to be made of white jade. The size of the cave at the bottom of the pond was not small. Its width and height were no less than 100 feet, and there was a terrifying chill surging out. Xiao Lingyu slowly entered the cave. Chapter 662. That white ball was naturally Lil Bing. However, compared to before, this ball's size was clearly much bigger. What surprised Xiao Lingyu was that on the four walls of this frost ice cave, there were actually countless fist-sized pieces of frost essence. These cold quintessences were embedded in the pure white stone walls, emitting a faint cold light and constantly releasing waves of chilling intent. The icy soul heavenly silkworm was floating in the air of this cave, expanding and contracting at times. Its body was emitting a faint white light, appearing very mysterious. If I use these messy frost essence to set up a formation, I reckon the effects of Lil Bing's cultivation will be even better. Thinking of this, Xiao Lingyu began to take action. He removed all the frost essence from the white jade walls, then rearranged it according to the mysterious diagram. After receiving the formation inheritance from the ancient expert Biao Zhou, although Xiao Lingyu was still unable to set up a very high-level formation, his understanding and knowledge of formations were definitely higher than the ordinary formation experts in the realm of the gods. Xiao Lingyu had only set up a simple high-quality god formation and used some special materials to support the frost quintessence. He had used the frost quintessence to form a formation, and the effects of the frost quintessence had increased by over 100 times. Lil Bing, who was originally very quiet in this ice cave, immediately began to tremble after being affected by the formation. The light around his body also became much stronger. After setting up the formation properly, Xiao Lingyu came out of the cave and stood guard outside the cave, looking at Lil Bing inside with rapt attention. Just as Xiao Lingyu was waiting for Lil Bing to come out of seclusion, the black light that was flashing continuously above the mountain tribe's territory finally turned into a black cloud that was like a vast ocean hanging in the sky. That black cloud was also shining with black light. However, those black lights were like meteors falling to the ground, landing on the ground and turning into monster-like cultivators wearing black armor. The bodies of these cultivators were all leaning forward. They had a tail that was more than 10 feet long and covered in scales. Their legs were very thick and strong, and their arms were very long. Their palms only had 3 claws, and they were holding all kinds of weapons. Their heads were covered by black helmets, making it impossible to see their faces clearly. Only a pair of eyes that seemed like black flames could be seen. In the central region of the mountain tribe, the dark light fell from the dark clouds in the sky like a storm. In the blink of an eye, the ground was filled with strange cultivators. They were not in a hurry to take action. They all remained where they were, looking up at the dark clouds in the sky. From time to time, they would let out roars. After a full 4 hours, 8 huge spaceships slowly emerged from the dark clouds. They then dispersed and flew off in 8 directions. The strange cultivators below also split into 8 groups, each following a ship as it sped away. The strange thing was that as the 8 huge ships moved forward, they constantly released waves of black mist, and it didn't take long for them to be submerged. There were originally 8 ships flying in the sky, but they gradually turned into a vast expanse of dark clouds. Under the cover of the dark clouds, it was so dark that one couldn't even see one's hand in front of one's face. In the territory of the mountain tribe, whether it was the birds flying in the sky or the fierce beasts or mountain tribesmen on the ground who couldn't escape in time, once they were discovered by the strange cultivators, they would definitely be besieged and torn apart. In the mountain tribe, there was a reign of terror. The dark clouds in the center of the territory of the mountain tribe gradually dissipated, and a boundless expanse of dark clouds, together with the countless strange cultivators on the ground, was like a surging wave in the sky and on the ground. They were rushing towards the narrow God realm at a speed of hundreds of thousands of kilometers per day. In the narrow God realm where the human and demon clans were located, the large clans and Saint God experts of the various regions continuously received warnings of danger from the border. The entire narrow God realm immediately became tense. Yongan, which was adjacent to the mountain tribe, was now almost a land of death. It was difficult to find any cultivators walking outside. A small number of cultivators in Yongan found a place that they thought was very safe and hid, but most of the cultivators had long fled to other regions. Even some fierce beasts and demonic beasts that had just begun to gain intelligence had long fled. The entire Yongan suddenly became silent. The empty cities made people feel desolate. However, there were countless small villages in Yongan, and there were countless low-level cultivators in these villages. They couldn't escape because their cultivation was low and they didn't have any high-grade magic treasures. Their speed was extremely slow, so even if they wanted to escape, they couldn't. They could only dig deep caves to temporarily hide. From the center of the territory of the mountain tribe to Yongan, it took the group of strange cultivators only a few hundred years. They originally gathered together and advanced in a group. Because they didn't encounter any threatening resistance, they gradually lined up in a long line and continued to advance rapidly. Wherever they passed, except for plants like flowers and fruits, all living things that could move and run were mercilessly killed and devoured. Even when they reached Yongan, they still advanced in a straight line. However, the cultivators of both the human and demon clans who were hoping to get lucky and find a place to hide suffered. This vast and strange army of cultivators seemed to have extremely powerful senses. Whether they hid deep underground, in caves in the belly of mountains, or at the bottom of lakes and riverbeds, they were easily found by them and then divided up and devoured. It was also because everyone was too afraid of the calamity and thought that it was unstoppable that this group of strange cultivators charged in with almost zero losses and gradually arrived at the capital of the Yongan realm, Yongan City. When preparing to deal with this catastrophe, not only did the family Jiang gather all the experts in the region to Yongan City, but they also obtained the help of experts from other regions. This calamity was different from the previous invasion of the Night Demon clan. No one knew how large the scope of this calamity would be, but they all knew that if the Eternal Peace Realm fell quickly, the other great regions would not be able to live a peaceful life either. Moreover, in the face of such a catastrophe, the Saint God experts with extraordinary status in the narrow God world had all moved out. The reason why the experts of the various regions were sending reinforcements to Yongan was because the sacred God had spoken, and they did not dare to disobey. Back then, in order to deal with the catastrophe, the human and demon clans of the narrow God world had gathered together to discuss. They all felt that rather than being separated and being defeated one by one, it would be better for everyone to gather their strength and find a few key battlefields to give the enemy a head-on blow. Perhaps, this would force the enemy to retreat. Yongan City was the first battleground that the human and demon clans had decided on to attack the invading enemies. The formation, which was originally in a straight line, gradually closed in and formed a huge encirclement. Even though Yongan City occupied an incomparably large area, the number of black-armored cultivators that descended from the mountain tribe was simply too large. Not only did they encircle Yongan City, but they also formed layer after layer of encirclement. From any direction, it was impossible to see how wide and thick the encirclement was. Standing on top of Yongin City's walls and looking into the distance, everyone felt that the enormous Yongin City was like an isolated island in the vast ocean. The black-armored cultivators surrounding Yongin City were only 1/8 of the total number of black-armored cultivators that were going to create this catastrophe. As the main city of the Narrow God World, and also one of the largest cities in the Narrow God World, Yongin City's walls were very tall. The stones used to build the walls were also not ordinary materials. Moreover, generations of family Jian experts had strengthened the walls countless times with formations and restrictions. Naturally, it was incomparably sturdy. Since the big shots of the Narrow God World had decided to fight the black-armored cultivators in Yongin City, they naturally made ample preparations. Not only were there a large number of human and demon clans experts stationed in Yongin City, but there were also countless defensive and offensive machinery and magic treasures. But even so, looking at the sea of black-armored cultivators around them, the cultivators of the two clans standing on top of the walls felt a chill in their hearts. No one thought that Yongin City could be defended. When the black-armored cultivators began to attack, the entire Yongin City was enveloped by a thick defensive light barrier. Under the defense of the light barrier, the attacks launched by the black-armored cultivators were all blocked outside the city. However, the light barrier did not restrict the attacks from outside the city. Under the joint attack of countless human and demon clans experts, a large number of black-armored cultivators were blasted into black light. Not long after, the dark clouds that originally shrouded the black-armored cultivators slowly moved to the sky above Yongin City, and nearly 30 experts with powerful auras descended. When these 30 experts released their auras, the space of the God World immediately boiled, and in an instant, they scattered around the light barrier that enveloped Yongin City. From this, it could be seen that they were all Saint God experts. No wonder this black-armored army dared to kill the human and demon clans. Just these 30 Saint Gods were enough to sweep through the Narrow God World. The Yongin City's city barrier formation was really very sturdy. Even when it was attacked by 30 Saint Gods, it only trembled and did not collapse. The reason why the big shots of the human and demon clans chose to fight the enemy in Yongin City was because they considered the might of the city barrier formation. The attacks of the black-armored Saint Gods seemed to be unable to break through the city barrier formation in a short time, and the black-armored army was still charging, but they suffered heavy casualties under the bombardment of the cultivators in the city. This made the defenders in the city much more excited, and they attacked with even more vigor. But this also made the black-armored army gradually feel strained and afraid. Half an hour later, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly disappeared. The huge ship was revealed and smashed toward the protection array of Yongin City. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion suddenly sounded. Dazzling light flashed above Yongin City, and then the light barrier that firmly protected Yongin City for a long time under the joint attack of the 30 Saint Gods shattered. The collapse of the city barrier formation in an instant killed hundreds of thousands of human and demon clans cultivators in Yongin City. Chapter 663. The battle in Yongin City was undoubtedly tragic. Even though the humans and demons sent out 6 Saint God experts, hundreds of God emperors, as well as countless God kings and God monarchs, they still lost miserably. Moreover, the entire battle took less than 4 hours from the time the enemy besieged the city to the time the humans and demons were utterly defeated. Not only did the other side have 5 times more Saint God experts than the humans and demons, but they also had an absolute advantage in Divine Emperor and Divine King cultivators. This battle allowed everyone to see the powerful strength of the enemy. Only then did they understand why the other side's arrival was not an invasion, but a catastrophe. Although Yongin City did not gather all the experts in the narrow sense of the God realm, there was definitely more than half of them. Even so, they could only hold on for less than 4 hours. Everyone really did not know how to stop this army. There seemed to be no better choice than to accept the slaughter or escape. Resistance seemed to only cause more casualties. One had to know that the black-armored army that entered the narrow sense of the divine realm was only 1/8 of all the black-armored cultivators. If all the black-armored cultivators arrived in the human and demon clans, what would the result be if not a catastrophe? During the Battle of Yulin City, over 100 million cultivators from both the human and demon race were stationed in Yulin City. Other than a few sacred deities and a few god emperors who managed to escape unscathed, almost all of them were annihilated. During this battle, Yulin City was razed to the ground, causing a dense smell of blood to spread for thousands of kilometers. After the Black Armored Army cleaned up the battlefield of Yangon City, they did not make any adjustments and continued to go deep into the narrow sense of the divine realm, continuing the massacre without any suspense. Less than 10 days after the Battle of Yangon City ended, Shaolin Yu, who was still at the bottom of the cold pool, finally saw a strange movement in the cave. Lil Bing had been cultivating in the large array set up by Shaolin Yu for hundreds of years. With the help of the large array, it absorbed all the cold essence on the stone wall of the cave, and its body grew bigger again. But what Shaolin Yu did not expect was that the original Lil Bing's body formed a thick eggshell-like cocoon. In less than 4 hours after the thick cocoon was formed, it directly split open. Although a snow-white little cutie crawled out, it was not Lil Bing's original appearance. A little demonic beast like a ferret crawled out of the broken thick cocoon, and then stuffed the thick cocoon into its mouth and enjoyed it. Its expression was not only charmingly naive but also full of spirituality. Shaolin Yu was sure that this little cutie was Lil Bing, but he did not understand how Lil Bing became like this. After thinking carefully, Shaolin Yu suddenly remembered that Qin Xian said that before Lil Bing was brought to the divine realm by the old woman, he had swallowed the little ferret. After eating the cocoon, Lil Bing's and directly, with a fierce look, Lil Bing. What surprised Shaolin Yu was that when Lil Bing pounced over, it actually carried an ice domain that he was unable to resist. It actually froze the space of the god realm at the bottom of the cold pond, causing him to be unable to move in the slightest. Fortunately, Lil Bing suddenly stopped when he approached Shaolin Yu, and circled around Shaolin Yu, even sniffing his body with his nose. In the end, Lil Bing seemed to sense an extremely familiar and intimate aura from Shaolin Yu. He did not attack Shaolin Yu, and instead lazily lay on Shaolin Yu's body. He dispersed the ice domain and began to comb his fur. It seemed that Lil Bing had recognized Shaolin Yu. From how Lil Bing had frozen him in an instant, he could tell that Lil Bing's current strength was definitely not below the sacred gods. The reason for this was related to the old woman's great nurturing and Lil Bing's extraordinary talent. Back in the cultivation world, Shaolin Yu had already discovered that Lil Bing, as an icy soul heavenly silkworm, definitely had cultivation resources that other cultivators and creatures could not hope to match. It was just that Shaolin Yu did not have the resources to nurture him back then. Lil Bing's strength made Shaolin Yu even more curious. Just what kind of treasure did old Monster Dugu have that the old woman was willing to give up Lil Bing to obtain a promise from Shaolin Yu? If he failed to kill old Monster Dugu, wouldn't the old woman lose Lil Bing as well as the treasures on old Monster Dugu's body? Since he could not figure it out, Shaolin Yu decided not to think about it. He tentatively reached out and gently touched Lil Bing's fur. Lil Bing had already withdrawn his aura and did not reject Shaolin Yu. Shaolin Yu's hand could feel the softness and coldness of Lil Bing's fur. Shaolin Yu gathered his courage and hugged Lil Bing from his shoulder. Lil Bing was also not rejected. Although Lil Bing's strength had greatly improved, he should not be much stronger than Shaolin Yu. Even if Lil Bing suddenly went crazy and wanted to deal with Shaolin Yu, he had many ways to deal with it. Lil Bing was very obedient and well-behaved. He even occasionally stuck out his little tongue to lick the back of Shaolin Yu's hand. Looks like you still remember your former master. Not bad, not bad. Shaolin Yu praised before hugging Lil Bing to the top of the Great Snow Mountain, only to see the old woman flying over. Shaolin Yu smiled and said, "You've come just in time. Lil Bing has just come out of seclusion and you've already rushed over." "He's Lil Bing? He's come out of seclusion so quickly? Saint God stage?" The old woman seemed to have just noticed Lil Bing, and she looked surprised. Shaolin Yu just nodded with a smile. "Xiao Dao Yu, our situation is not good at the moment." The old woman's gaze shifted from Lil Bing, and then she said to Shaolin Yu, "Is the catastrophe coming?" Xiao Yu asked without changing his expression. Yes, at that moment, the old woman told the situation of the battle in Yangon City. At that time, she and Cui Yu were both present. Cui Yu's two female disciples, the two daughters of family Zhang's patriarch, did they escape? Xiao Yu asked with concern. I didn't see them appear. I don't know their current situation, but after the battle, they were not among the powerhouses who left Yangon City alive. The old woman shook her head. Xiao Yu frowned and asked, "What's the current situation?" The old woman said, "The current situation is very dangerous and difficult for us. From the battle in Yangon City, it can be seen that fighting head-on with the other side on a large scale is like throwing an egg against a rock. So everyone decided to disperse and gather together. Maybe a few forces can survive." Xiao Yu nodded and said, "That's the only way we can do it. Fighting head-on is simply courting death, so we can only hide. I just hope that they won't repeatedly wipe out our narrow divine realm and just leave after sweeping once. There are more than 10 famous holy gods in the human clan and the monster clan. Now they are divided into 4 groups, with 2 or 3 holy gods in each group. Cui Yu and I are in one group. This time, I'm here to ask Xiao Daoyu to help. If our group is attacked by the other side, even if we can't resist, with the help of Xiao Daoyu, we can at least escape from the battlefield." The old woman said to Xiao Yu. Cooperation with Cui Yu and the old woman was something that had been properly planned before. Even if he knew that the enemy was powerful, Xiao Yu would not break his promise. He immediately took out the tubular sacred weapon and teleported to Kongrong Mountain. Now that the catastrophe was about to sweep across the entire narrow divine realm, Xiao Yu did not expect the disciples of the Hua Men to continue to try their best to find Anya, so he didn't need to inquire anymore. Anya was also a smart and capable person. He probably knew that the catastrophe was approaching and had already used the speed of the unforgivable divine sword to fly out of the narrow divine realm. Various signs indicated that the group of black-armored cultivators of unknown origin did not come to plunder cultivation resources. They seemed to have come to kill. Wherever they went, other than creating carnage, they did not care much about cultivation resources. In other words, wherever there were cultivators, the black-armored cultivators would go. As long as there were cultivators, it was not a safe place, especially where a large number of cultivators gathered. Therefore, the elders of the human clan and monster clan decided to not engage in a large-scale battle. Instead, they spread their forces out so that the black-armored cultivators would not be able to find a target, allowing them to roam freely in the narrow divine realm. As a result, anyone who encountered the black-armored cultivators would be unlucky. However, the human clan and monster clan did not completely give up on resistance. They divided their saint god experts into groups, each overseeing a region. In reality, they were doing their best to protect the people of the two clans. Due to the limited number of saint god experts in the two clans, it was impossible for them to take care of every region. Therefore, they decisively gave up on some regions, such as Yong'an, which had already lost its ability to resist, and the relatively weaker Changle region. The Weiyuan region, where Kongrong Mountain was located, was a relatively strong and rich region. Among all the regions in the narrow divine realm, the Weiyuan region was only slightly weaker than the Chao family's fortune region. In addition, Kongrong Mountain, where Cui Yu was located, was in the Weiyuan region. Therefore, the Weiyuan region was heavily protected by the human clan and monster clan. This so-called heavy protection meant that the Weiyuan region had 2 saint gods overseeing it. However, in the face of the black-armored cultivators, the 2 saint gods could only flee. For the cultivators of the narrow divine realm, perhaps many experts could escape. However, even if they escaped to the territories of other clans, it was difficult to guarantee that they would not be attacked by the experts of other clans. It was not much safer than staying in the narrow divine realm. The black-armored cultivators advanced at an extremely fast speed. Most of the cultivators at the bottom of the divine realm could not escape from the narrow divine realm. However, after meeting Cui Yu, Xiao Yu received news that Jiang Huanyue and Jiang Wanchang did not suffer any losses in the Battle of Yong'an City. This was because the two of them had already been sent out of the narrow divine realm by family Jiangxingye. They were currently on their way to Heavenly Saint Island. Now that Brother Xiao has come to help, and with this little cutie, we have 4 Saint God experts. Our safety has increased by a lot. Chui Yu said with a gratified expression when he saw Xiaoling Yu. However, the corners of Xiaoling Yu's mouth curled as she said, "It's not just 4 Saint Gods." The old lady and Chui Yu were both confused. Xiaoling Yu did not explain. Just now, Xiaoling Yu noticed that the foodie, who was sleeping in the spirit beast bag, suddenly turned over. Chapter 664. As expected, after waiting for less than half a month, the foodie finally woke up. After devouring the corpse of the ancient late-stage heaven-piercing expert Wan Zhou, the glutton naturally advanced to the holy god realm. After all, it was already a late-stage god emperor before devouring the corpse. Even though the energy contained in the corpse was less than 1/10,000th of what it had when it was alive, it was still enough for the glutton to advance from late-stage god emperor to holy god. Xiaoling Yu's 8th revolution and the glutton's holy god dual domain should be able to contend against old eccentric Dugu's 6th level sword force domain. If old eccentric Dugu used the 6th level heaven sword secret art to deal with Xiaoling Yu, he would be at a great disadvantage. Not long after the glutton woke up, Chui Yu received a message. The enormous and powerful black armored army was divided into 4 groups, and one of them was currently heading towards the way-distant region. The shortest route to the way-distant region from Yeoman was through the mountain range where the Kongrong mountain was located. "It seems I'll have to give up on this cave dwelling," Chui Yu said with a solemn expression. "It's just a broken courtyard. It doesn't matter if you lose it. It's fine as long as you're still alive. If you lose your life, it'll be useless no matter how good the cave dwelling is," the old lady said. "How many holy gods are there in the black armored army heading towards us?" Xiaoling Yu calmly asked. "I don't know, but if they divided their holy gods equally into 4 groups, there should be 8 of them heading towards us," Chui Yu replied with uncertainty. "If there are only 8 of them, then we might be able to fight them." Xiaoling Yu rubbed his chin as his eyes shone brightly. Both Chui Yu and the old lady looked at Xiaoling Yu in surprise. Chui Yu said, "Brother Xiao, don't underestimate the enemy. Even if you're included, we only have 4 holy gods. There's no way we can fight against 8 holy gods, not to mention that they have a large and powerful army." The old woman added, "Even if we disregard the ordinary black-armored sacred gods, the enemy has 8 sacred gods, which is twice our number. Coupled with the fact that the black-armored sacred gods are all extremely powerful and skilled in teamwork and battle formations, the 8 of them can be considered as more than 10 ordinary sacred gods. Also, we can't underestimate that warship. Its power is above that of a saint weapon," Chui Yu added. Xiaoling Yu didn't argue. "Then let's see how it goes." Xiaoling Yu had already calculated that Chui Yu, the old lady, himself, Lil Bing, and Foodie would be 5 holy gods. If the 4 holy gods were included, there would be 9 holy gods on Kongrong Mountain's side, 1 more than the black-armored holy gods that were heading towards them. Under normal circumstances, Xiaoling Yu felt that they wouldn't be at a disadvantage in a battle of holy gods. After all, the 4 holy gods weren't afraid of any attacks. As long as they didn't run out of time, they wouldn't be killed. This was one of their greatest advantages. In addition, Xiaoling Yu and Foodie could form a dual primal chaos domain. Lil Bing's icebound domain was also powerful. As long as Chui Yu and the old lady could each hold back 1 holy god, and as long as there were only 8 holy gods on the other side, they would have a chance of winning. As for how powerful the warship was, Xiaoling Yu hadn't seen it with his own eyes, so he had to be cautious. He had to observe the situation first before deciding whether to fight it out. The enemy's speed was extremely fast. From the time Chui Yu received the news to the time the black armored army arrived at the foot of Kongrong Mountain, only 20 years had passed. Xiaoling Yu felt his scalp go numb as he looked at the innumerable black armored army. Chui Yu and the old lady both looked at the sky, but they didn't see the warship, so they relaxed a little. "It seems that the warship isn't moving with this army. It should be going somewhere else," Chui Yu said with narrowed eyes. There's only one warship that invaded our narrow holy god realm. Naturally, it can't take care of every army, the old lady said with a relaxed expression. As the black armored army moved around Coral Mountain, two of the black armored holy gods flew to the top of the mountain. However, before they reached the top, they suddenly stopped and let out ear-piercing screeches. Not long after, 6 more black armored holy gods flew over. Just as Chueyu and the old lady expected, there were 8 black armored holy gods overseeing the army. Behind the 8 black armored holy gods, there were several hundred black armored holy gods. They formed a semicircle and slowly surrounded the army. Sigh, let's retreat. Chueyu sighed. He had no choice but to give up his place of cultivation and fly in the direction of Weiyuan region. The old lady naturally followed without hesitation, and Xiaolingyu only hesitated for a moment before flying away. While hesitating, Xiaolingyu used his divine sense to probe the auras of the black armored holy gods. The result was similar to what Chueyu and the old lady had said. The auras of the black armored holy gods were indeed very strange, but they were also more powerful than ordinary holy god experts. If the black armored holy gods were really good at forming battle formations and cooperating well, then Xiaolingyu's current strength really wouldn't be able to fight them head-on. The 8 holy gods on the other side weren't in a hurry to chase after them. They only protected the black armored army and continued to fly towards Weiyuan region. To deal with the black armored army, we just need to defeat the 8 black armored holy gods, Xiaolingyu said as they flew. If we gather all the holy gods of the human and demon races, we might be able to defeat them, the old lady added. Gathering all the holy gods of the 2 races is more difficult than defeating them, Chueyu said with a bitter smile. Actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Xiaolingyu shook his head and continued, as long as we can scatter them or force them to separate, we can defeat them on our own. Of course, the precondition is that their God-Emperor powerhouses are also restrained. Otherwise, with hundreds of God-Emperor powerhouses gathered together, they would be able to display the power of 2 or 3 Saint God powerhouses. Chueyu and the old lady were astonished. They didn't understand where Xiaolingyu's confidence came from. As they flew towards the depths of Weiyuan region, they were thinking of countermeasures. Chueyu and the old lady were also receiving a steady stream of new information from various regions through various channels. However, all of the information indicated that the narrow sense of the God world would most likely suffer heavy losses in this calamity, and that the situation would not be reversed at all. Even if this catastrophe doesn't destroy our human and demon races, it will probably reduce our numbers by 80 to 90%. Chueyu said with a heavy expression. Old Monster Dugu has also made his move. He actually killed a black armored holy god in the Fortune region and seriously injured 2 others. The 7th level of the Heaven Sword secret art is indeed worthy of its reputation, the old lady added. Xiaolingyu frowned when he heard that. He was still forced to retreat in the end. If our experts were as strong as him, we wouldn't have to be so afraid of the black armored army, Chueyu said with a bitter smile. Old Monster Dugu has already fought with the black armored holy god in the Fortune region. Are we going to keep retreating? Xiaolingyu asked. Chueyu and the old lady could feel Xiaolingyu's battle intent. However, they felt that Xiaolingyu was still young and fearless. Chueyu and the old lady only stopped when they reached Weiyuan City. Like the cultivators in Yong'an, the cultivators in Weiyuan region were more confident in the city's defense. They all hid in the city. Weiyuan City was currently overcrowded. Naturally, there were many Weiyuan region experts in the city. However, after a quick count, they realized that there were less than 30 emperor gods and less than 4,000 divine kings in Weiyuan City. With such strength, even if the holy gods weren't included, they were still far from the black armored army. Seeing the city full of cultivators, Chueyu and the old lady were very hesitant. If they continued to flee, the cultivators in Weiyuan City would definitely be slaughtered. No matter what, we'll have to fight in Weiyuan City. Chueyu said helplessly. Yes. If we continue to flee and let the cultivators in the city be slaughtered, I'm afraid that after the calamity, our backbones will be broken by all the cultivators in the God realm. The old lady nodded in agreement. But even if we do our best, we won't be able to protect the cultivators in the city. Chueyu sighed. At least there are many cultivators in Weiyuan City who can fight with us. The battle here can buy time for many other cultivators to escape. Xiaolingyu smacked her lips. Her words were obviously leaning towards a battle. In less than half a month, the black armored army arrived in a grandiose manner and quickly surrounded Weiyuan City. Only now did the cultivators in Weiyuan City know that the rumors were true. Yilin City's fall wasn't just an alarmist rumor. Weiyuan City also had a powerful Great City Barrier Array, but it was slightly weaker than the one in Yilin City. Under the joint attack of 8 sacred gods and many god emperors, the Great City Barrier Array showed signs of collapse. Before the Great City Barrier Array collapsed, Chueyu, the old lady, and Xiaolingyu rushed out of the Great City Barrier Array and launched their attacks at the enemy experts. Xiaolingyu had already prepared a strengthened version of the Primal Chaos Seal and sent it towards the enemy god emperors. Although the chaotic seal, which was dragging a terrifying crack in space, was blocked by the combined efforts of the emperor gods, the ferocious explosion still took away the lives of more than 10 emperor gods. Chueyu, the old lady, Xiaolingyu, Lil Bing, and Fudi had already arrived in the sky above Weiyuan City. The 5 of them released the aura of sacred gods, which attracted the attention of the enemy. The 8 sacred gods attacked together. In order to destroy the city and slaughter the cultivators in the city with a small price, the enemy god emperors didn't follow them. Instead, they continued to attack the Great City Barrier Array. Under Xiaolingyu's reminder, Chueyu and the old lady retreated as they fought, luring the enemy god emperors into the sky. Chapter 665. Xiaolingyu had already summoned the divine weapon, the yin-yang mirror, as he flew high into the sky. When they were far away from Weiyuan City, the 4 monsters suddenly revealed themselves after Xiaolingyu expended a lot of power. Chueyu and the old lady looked at the 4 monsters in astonishment. They finally felt much more at ease and understood the origin of Xiaolingyu's confidence. Although the situation was not reversed in an instant, at least they had the upper hand in terms of the number of holy god experts on their side. Originally, it would have been best to use the yin-yang mirror after the battle began, but Xiaolingyu needed the 4 monsters, who were fearless and unkillable, to break up the enemy's formation. He had to give up on that best plan. Under the control of Xiaolingyu's divine telekinesis, the 4 virtual monsters set up the 4 symbols territory and rushed toward the other party like ghosts. The 8 black-armored holy gods did not know the mystery of the monsters, so they naturally stopped at the same time and attacked one after another. 8 streaks of black light, which could cut through the void, whizzed out in pairs and bombarded the 4 monsters fiercely. However, to the surprise of the 8 black-armored sacred gods, even though the black light that they had shot out could shatter the void, it passed right through the monsters when it hit them. The 4 monsters weren't harmed at all. Before the 8 black-armored sacred gods could launch another attack, the 4 illusory monsters had already closed in on them. The 8 black-armored sacred gods were indeed good at battle formations. Their cooperation was also very good. As soon as the 4 virtual monsters came close, they suddenly spread out in 8 directions and surrounded the 4 virtual monsters in an instant. Xiaolingyu's side finally stopped and prepared to attack. The 8 black-armored holy gods reacted extremely quickly. They did not give Xiaolingyu and the other holy gods a chance to attack and had already set up their domains. The 8 almost identical domains stacked on top of each other, reinforcing each other. Not only did they suppress the 4 symbols domain, they even sealed off a large area of space. With the support of the domain, the 8 black lights appeared again. They were like 8 peerless divine swords, flying in the air and biting each other's tails. They turned into a circle of sawtooth wheels, sweeping back and forth in their domain. Unfortunately, such a tyrannical attack was also useless against the 4 monsters. No matter how the sawtooth wheel swept past them, the 4 monsters were not damaged in the slightest. Instead, they tried their best to move toward the 8 black-armored sacred gods. Although the 4 phantom monsters were not afraid of any attacks, once their four symbols domain was unable to form an advantage, their attack level would not be strong. Naturally, Xiaoling Yu and the others could not sit back and watch. After Xiaoling Yu shouted and blasted out the strengthened version of the primal chaos seal, Cui Yu and the old lady also made their moves. After all, Cui Yu and the old lady had been in the holy god stage for many years. Naturally, they did not lack holy treasures. Their attack level was definitely stronger than any of the phantom monsters. Lil Bing shook his cute little head. Instantly, countless white strands, as if he had suddenly grown hair, grew crazily and enveloped the battlefield. Fudi's usual lazy attitude was swept away. He carried Xiaoling Yu and fearlessly charged into the opponent's domain. The 8 black-armored holy gods were only slightly flustered. Then, they changed their formation again and gathered in pairs. They changed from 8 directions to 4 corners, but the power of their domain did not weaken. Fudi and Xiaoling Yu's dual chaotic domains were still unable to withstand the opponent's combined domains. However, Fudi still relied on his courage and ferocity to charge into the 4 symbols domain with Xiaoling Yu. At this time, Xiaoling Yu and Fudi were in the center of the battlefield. The 4 phantom monsters were on Xiaoling Yu's 4 sides. The 8 black-armored holy gods were in pairs and surrounded the 4 phantom monsters. Cui Yu, the old lady, and Lil Bing were outside to provide support. It was obvious that in such a formation, Xiaoling Yu and Fudi were naturally in charge of attacking and defending with all their strength. Cui Yu, the old lady, and Lil Bing were in charge of disrupting the opponent's formation so that the opponent could not attack Xiaoling Yu and Fudi with all their strength. The opponent seemed to have realized that this was a little tricky. They exchanged glances and then quickly advanced along a circular path. The 8 black-armored holy gods were moving faster and faster. In the end, even Xiaoling Yu could no longer see their figures. He could only see a black halo. The black halo continued to shrink, but the combined domain within the halo continued to grow in power. As the black halo shrank, it was constantly releasing rays of black light. These rays of black light rapidly transformed into circular sawtooth wheels and ruthlessly bombarded Xiaoling Yu and Fudi, who were in the midst of the 4 symbols domain and the dual chaotic domains. As for the 4 phantom monsters, the 8 black-armored holy gods had already given up on attacking them. The 4 phantom monsters became Xiaoling Yu and Fudi's shields. They took the initiative to shift their positions and block the sawtooth wheels, reducing the pressure on Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu summoned the tubular saint artifact and the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron. He used the saint artifact to defend himself. At the same time, he had the chaotic dark shadow flames transform into fire dragons that lunged towards the outer ring of light. However, what gave Xiaoling Yu a headache was that the 8 holy gods were moving too quickly. He couldn't lock onto any of them. Although his and Fudi's attacks could easily hit the halo, they couldn't hit the 8 black-armored holy gods that formed the halo. It was the same for Cui Yu, the old lady, and Lil Bing outside. The 8 black-armored holy gods didn't block or restrict their attacks. However, their attacks were also ineffective. The halo was still shrinking, and the domains within the halo were constantly strengthening. Just as Xiaoling Yu was thinking of a countermeasure, and Cui Yu, the old lady, and Lil Bing thought that the halo would continue to shrink, the black halo suddenly expanded and enveloped Cui Yu, the old lady, and Lil Bing who were outermost. The moment the circle of light closed in, over a dozen sawtooth wheels surrounded them. Even though Cui Yu and the old woman had saint artifacts to block them, they were still struck by one of the sawtooth wheels. They then spat out blood and suffered heavy injuries. Lil Bing's entire body was instantly covered by a thick and solid ice crystal. Although the ice crystal was shattered, it was safe and sound. Then, Xiaoling Yu brought Fudi and the 4 monsters to Cui Yu and the old lady's side. Lil Bing dodged and jumped into Xiaoling Yu's arms. It used its little paws to pat its chest, looking very scared. Cui Yu and the old lady's faces were a little pale, but they still braced themselves to block the endless sawtooth wheels with Xiaoling Yu. The sawtooth wheels continued to form and continued to spin. The black halo gradually shrank again, as if it wanted to annihilate Xiaoling Yu's experts in one fell swoop. Within the circle of light, the power of the opponent's domain continued to increase. The sawtooth will they shot out also became sharper and sharper. In a situation where the four symbols domain and the dual chaos domain were suppressed, even with the protection of a saint artifact, it was clearly difficult to completely protect them. The primal chaos dark shadow fire was originally able to destroy one of the sawtooth wheels, but after 10 minutes, the newly formed sawtooth wheels were able to pierce through the primal chaos dark shadow fire. 8 sacred gods who were adept at combining battle formations were truly not to be underestimated. It was no wonder that Chueyu and the old lady found it difficult to fight. However, even if Shaolin Yu's side wanted to break out of the encirclement, it would be difficult for them to do so. Under the suppression of their opponent's powerful domain, they were unable to increase their speed and charge out. Even their tubular saint artifact was locked in place, preventing them from using greater teleportation. Even so, Shaolin Yu's face remained calm, because he still had 2 trump cards that he had yet to use. Shaolin Yu's side could only do their best to defend. Shaolin Yu no longer had the time to counterattack. The opponent's powerful combination domain had almost solidified the space around them. Boundless spatial power was constantly fluctuating and pressing down on them, limiting their attacks and reducing their defensive capabilities. It was even harder for the sacred artifacts to display their might. Fortunately, Shaolin Yu's side had many sacred artifacts. With them all used for defense and the help of the 4 monsters, they could still hold on for a little while longer. Shaolin Yu was very patient. He was still waiting for the right time to act, and did not recklessly use his trump cards. When the 5-colored halo shrunk to a diameter of 10 feet, the powerful combination domain suppressed Shaolin Yu's side to the point where they could not even lift a single finger. Unable to defend in time, they were repeatedly struck by the Dharma wheels. Chueyu and the old lady's injuries were worsening, and even Shaolin Yu, who had a supreme quality sacred artifact, was coughing up blood. Lil Bing and Fudi, on the other hand, did not seem to be worried. These 2 demonic beasts with special bloodlines and powerful physical bodies only cried out in pain after being hit by the Dharma wheels. There were no injuries on their bodies. Even if it was just a cry of pain, Shaolin Yu's heart still ached when he heard it. Shaolin Yu's sacred artifacts had already been sealed in place. Although they could not move, they could still help them block most of the attacks from the sawtooth Dharma wheels. As for Fudi, who had advanced to the sacred god level, even if it was suppressed, it could still wave its tail to defend. Furthermore, its scaly tail had an extremely strong defensive power. Just as the black halo suddenly stopped spinning and the 8 black-armored sacred gods reappeared, the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron transformed from a treasured cauldron into an 8-legged monster. Soon after, the power of the brilliant white flame expanded rapidly. In an instant, it released numerous brilliant white fire snakes that swept toward the 8 black-armored divine gods. The reason why the 8 black-armored sacred gods stopped the black halo was because they wanted to suddenly attack all the enemies except for the 4 monsters. Therefore, they immediately rushed forward after reappearing, and just happened to collide with the brilliant white fire serpents. At this moment, Shaolin Yu used the chaotic phantom fire to block the fire serpents that were pouncing towards him. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough for him to bring everyone into the tubular sacred artifact. Then, the chair flew out of his body and into the sky, before crashing down heavily. Chapter 666. The 8 black-armored holy gods originally thought that after suppressing their opponents for so long and injuring them severely, their opponents would have used their trump cards long ago instead of waiting until now. Unfortunately, they were wrong. They underestimated Shaolin Yu's patience and fighting spirit. When they were still in the black halo, if Shaolin Yu used his trump cards, the damage done to them would be extremely limited. Shaolin Yu was waiting for them to stop. The brilliant white fire snakes naturally couldn't do anything to Shaolin Yu and the other experts who were hiding in the tubular saint artifact. Although they were caught off guard and wrapped around the 8 black-armored holy gods, the defensive power of their black-armored armor was extremely strong and could temporarily block the burning of the brilliant white flames. However, just blocking the burning of the brilliant white flames was far from enough. The seat magic treasure that had been refined by Shaolin Yu for many years came crashing down. Although only 3 black-armored holy gods were in the attack range of the seat, the black-armored holy gods on both sides managed to escape the binding of the brilliant white fire snakes. The black-armored holy god in the center was smashed by the huge and heavy seat. The huge force surged from the top of his head. Even a holy god expert couldn't block it. After the seat smashed into the black-armored holy god, its falling momentum only slowed down slightly. However, it still smashed the black-armored holy god into the ground. With a loud boom, heaven and earth trembled. Even the cultivators who were fighting in Weiyuan City couldn't help but shake their bodies and look over in shock. Although Shaolin Yu had only refined the surface of the seat magic treasure, it was enough for him to make it quickly rise into the air and smash it down again. The black-armored holy god who was smashed down didn't even have time to react before he was hit again. All the bones in his body cracked and his head was smashed until he was dizzy. The other 7 black-armored holy gods naturally wouldn't sit by and watch. However, they were bound by the brilliant white fire snakes. It was obviously impossible for them to form a formation again. Moreover, their strength was greatly restricted because they had to resist and break free from the brilliant white fire snakes. In addition, the brilliant white flames and the seat magic treasure appeared at the same time. With the momentum, their multiple combination domains were broken. After all, the black-armored holy god who was smashed into the air by the seat couldn't set up his own domain to cooperate with everyone. Thus, the counterattack began. The 4 monsters were not afraid of the white flames. They surrounded a black-armored sacred deity. A black-armored sacred god was naturally no match for 4 phantom monsters. Soon, it was heavily injured. Shaolin Yu saw that the black-armored holy gods were only slightly stronger than ordinary human holy gods after being bound by the white flames and losing their battle formation. Therefore, she split up the 4 monsters and attacked one of the black-armored holy gods. The throne had already knocked out the unlucky black-armored sacred god, and it flew towards the other black-armored sacred gods. The 8 black-armored sacred gods, who had come ferociously, possessed extraordinary strength, and were extremely powerful when they formed a battle formation, had actually been heavily injured in the span of 20 breaths before they could break free from the shackles of the brilliant white flames. They had lost their powerful battle prowess. At this point, Shaolin Yu had the 8-legged monster increase its strength and suppress the power of the brilliant white flames. There were 9 holy gods on her side, and each of them went to take care of an enemy. Even though the 8 black-armored sacred gods were strong, they were already spent and heavily injured. They could only roar angrily at Shaolin Yu. Shaolin Yu originally wanted to kill all of them, but after thinking for a while, she gave up on her previous plan. Primal chaos energy gushed out, and the 8 black-armored sacred gods had their strength sealed by Shaolin Yu. From then on, they could not resist at all. After the battle on this side ended, Shaolin Yu brought the experts on her side and flew towards Weiyuan City. Weiyuan City had already been breached. The city walls had collapsed, and corpses were strewn all around the city. It was a ghastly sight. Less than 10% of the cultivators in the city were left. The entire city was practically occupied by the black-armored army. However, with the addition of Shaolin Yu and the other holy gods, the countless black-armored soldiers could only accept the fate of being mercilessly slaughtered. In the face of so many holy gods, even if the black-armored army had many god-emperor experts, they could not resist at all. The foodie was like a peerless ferocious beast. She charged into the black-armored army unstoppably and unstoppably. Xiao Bing's icebound domain froze a large area of space. Wherever her white thread swept, the black-armored cultivators would be pierced through. Finally, they fell to the ground covered in white frost. Every time Shaolin Yu's strength and primal chaos seal was used, it would take away the lives of many black-armored cultivators. The 4 illusory monsters charged for a while before disappearing because the time was up. Although Cui Yu and the old lady were injured, they were more than enough to deal with the black-armored cultivators below the holy god level. There was no doubt that the Battle of Weiyuan City was won by the human and demon clans. Although there were less than a tenth of the cultivators of the two clans left in Weiyuan City, and although Weiyuan City no longer existed, the menacing and almost invincible Black Armor army was completely annihilated. This battle was destined to be remembered by the later generations of the human and demon races. As for how they won this battle and why the 8 black-armored cultivators were defeated, very few people knew. The black-armored army that charged into Weiyuan region was completely wiped out. Even their 8 holy gods were not spared. Weiyuan region was naturally safe for the time being. The news quickly spread to the other large regions of the god world, but the majority of them did not believe it, especially the holy gods who snorted disdainfully. The experts of the narrow god world knew that there were only 2 holy gods in Weiyuan region. The difference in strength between them and the black-armored army was too great. There was no way they could win. The loss of one of the 4 black-armored armies did not affect the movements of the other 3 armies. They continued to advance according to their predetermined goals. However, the only ship that invaded the narrow god world was stealthily flying towards Weiyuan region at an extremely fast speed. Although this battle was glorious, the enemy will definitely retaliate even more fiercely and crazily. It's best if we make preparations early, the old woman said worriedly. We've already fought and won an astonishing victory. It can be considered a great contribution to the human and demon races. Moreover, we're all injured. If we continue to fight, we'll just be throwing our lives away. Why don't we go into hiding first? Chuiyu echoed. Previously, they were afraid of being scolded if they didn't fight. They were afraid of losing face and integrity as holy gods. Now that they had fought and won, there was naturally no need to risk their lives. Xiaoling Yu didn't fight for face or integrity. First, as a human expert, he should take action in the face of a calamity. Second, he wanted to see how powerful he was now. Xiaoling Yu was naturally very satisfied with the results of this battle. Although the strength of the 8 black-armored holy gods had surprised him and he had suffered heavy injuries, at least he had won and captured 8 black-armored holy gods. The treasures and treasures of these 8 guys, Brother Xiao, you don't have to be so polite with us. I'm already very satisfied that you won this battle and that you're still alive. You don't have to share anything with me. Old Brother Xiao, you just have to remember our previous agreement. Old Brother Xiao can take the treasures on them for your own use. After all, Old Brother Xiao still has a magnificent sect. With so many subordinates, you will need some treasures to keep up appearances. Just as Xiaoling Yu was about to suggest sharing the spoils, Chuiyu and the old woman spoke one after another, indicating that they had no intention of taking the treasures of the 8 black-armored holy gods. Even so, Xiaoling Yu couldn't really monopolize all the treasures. He still gave all the treasures of 2 black-armored holy gods to Chuiyu and the old woman. Although Chuiyu and the old woman didn't play a big role in this battle, if they weren't here, the result of this battle would be unknown. Brother Xiao, how do you plan to deal with them? It's not a good thing to keep them by your side. Chuiyu pointed at the 8 black-armored holy gods and asked Xiaoling Yu. I have some cultivation techniques that they can use. Xiaoling Yu smiled vaguely. Chuiyu and the old woman naturally wouldn't ask too much about other people's cultivation techniques. Immediately, Xiaoling Yu used the tubular sacred weapon to teleport again. Chuiyu and the old woman also separated to find a place to heal their wounds. The battle was already over. Even if the other party wanted to take revenge, they had to find the target first. Xiaoling Yu first found Guanywei and asked about the Huamen's situation and whether there was any news about Anya before teleporting again. The Huamen had suffered a great loss this time. Nearly half of the Huamen cultivators had died under the Black-Armored Army's massacre. More than half of the huge network that the Huamen had painstakingly built was paralyzed. In addition, the Huamen cultivators were all looking for places to hide. No one dared to go out and carry out any missions. Naturally, it was impossible to find Anya's traces. Xiaoling Yu could understand this, so he didn't force Guanywei. Instead, he teleported out of the narrow god realm. After teleporting, Xiaoling Yu was far away from the narrow god realm. For the time being, he definitely wouldn't be attacked by the black armored army. He randomly found a place and used the body transformation technique to heal his wounds. Then, he entered the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron. In a sealed space in the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron, the 8 black-armored holy gods who had their cultivations sealed and were heavily injured all stood motionless. Xiaoling Yu began to circle around the 8 black-armored sacred gods. His divine consciousness sank into their bodies without any resistance, and he began to study them carefully. The internal structures of the 8 black-armored holy gods were very strange. They were very different from the human and demon cultivators. However, Xiaoling Yu didn't care about the structure of their bodies. What he cared about was the medium in which the black-armored holy gods stored their energy and their souls. The black-armored holy gods didn't have nascent souls. Instead, they had an internal space similar to the Dantian. There was a black ball of light the size of a watermelon inside. Chapter 667. The heavens are really helping me. After checking for a long time, Xiaoling Yu suddenly clapped his hands and laughed. The fusion of the soul and the power naturally helped the soul to control the power. It also allowed the output of the power to have the effect of a soul attack. Naturally, the power could also protect the soul firmly. However, there were advantages and disadvantages. For example, when their power was exhausted, their soul would be greatly affected. And when their soul was shaken, their power would also become chaotic. Xiaoling Yu finally understood why the black-armored sacred god was stunned after being hit by the chair. He rubbed his chin and pondered for a long time. Then, he sat down cross-legged. Using the power of the primal chaos divine force and his divine sense, he first knocked the 8 black-armored sacred gods unconscious. Then, he began to search their souls one by one. The 8 sacred gods had cultivated for a long time. The content of their memories was naturally vast. Fortunately, Xiaoling Yu only checked their memories of cultivation methods. Moreover, their cultivation methods were almost identical. Therefore, it took less than a month before he stopped searching their souls. Xiaoling Yu naturally didn't just check their cultivation methods. He also checked their origins. However, their origins were unexpected to Xiaoling Yu. The black-armored sacred army didn't come from the god realm Xiaoling Yu was in. They came from another god realm. That god realm and this god realm were not in the same universe. However, a spatial passage would often appear between the two. The black-armored sacred army used the spatial passage to come to this god realm every once in a while. However, that god realm was much smaller than this god realm. There were less than 10 races in that god realm. Moreover, below that god realm, there were also lower realms like the immortal, devil, and demon realms in the cultivation realm. Similarly, they had to constantly cultivate and ascend to a higher realm to continue cultivating. The spatial passage between the two god realms would appear at different locations every time. Therefore, when they invaded this god realm, they would appear at different places every time. It was precisely because they were not from a certain race in the divine realm that they did not feel any psychological burden when invading. They could kill wantonly because the experts here would not be able to retaliate against them at all. Although the divine realm had many powerful experts, there was no way to predict where they would appear, and there was no way to take care of every corner of the divine realm. They could only let them do as they pleased. In any case, they would only appear once in a while. In any case, there were countless races in the divine realm, so the loss of being massacred once was negligible to the entire divine realm. However, the spatial passageway could only be maintained for less than 10,000 years every time it appeared. In other words, they had to retreat within 10,000 years. Even if the spatial passage could last for a long time, they didn't dare to stay here for too long. 10,000 years wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time either. Given the speed at which the black-armored army was advancing, it was enough for them to sweep through the entire narrow god realm. However, the 200 or so saint gods that had originally come were divided into 8 armies. With the mountain race as the center, they attacked in 8 different directions simultaneously. Each direction had 30 or so saint gods, and each of them had a divine spirit treasure-grade ship. As a result, their strength was spread out. Of course, even if there were over 30 saint gods, no race could face them alone, not to mention that they had divine spiritual treasures. The origin of the other side was not important. It was only to let Xiaolingyu know that there was another god realm outside the divine realm, and to lessen the burden on Xiaolingyu's heart. Originally, he was still worried that the other side would retaliate against him for killing 8 saint gods. But now, there was no need to worry. He only needed to hide for 10,000 years. Even if they came again and found a way to find him, 1,000,000,000 years had passed. He had no reason to fear them. Moreover, after such a long time, if he didn't fail to break through to the 9th revolution and die, he would have already gone to a higher level space to cultivate. Although the narrow god realm was still in an abyss of suffering, he had already done his best for the human and demon races. He had also killed 8 saint gods, so he had done his best. The other side had divine spiritual treasures, and Xiaolingyu had seen the power of divine spiritual treasures when he was in the dorsal fin tribe. He naturally didn't dare to appear in front of the Black Armor army so easily. As for Anya, the Hua men had suffered heavy losses, and all of them were in hiding. No one could find her. Although Xiaolingyu was very worried about her safety, he could only wait patiently and pray to the heavens. After meditating for a few more days, Xiaolingyu recovered to his peak state and began to circulate his cultivation technique. As he circulated his cultivation technique, the 8 little people circling above the chaotic divine infant in his dantian came out one after another and appeared above Xiaolingyu's head. At this moment, the 8 saint gods whose memories and consciousness had been wiped away by Xiaolingyu stood around Xiaolingyu. Their eyes were closed, and their auras were deep. Not long after, Xiaolingyu's chaotic divine infant also came out of his dantian. It opened its mouth and spat out 8 chaotic dim shadow flames, which enveloped the 8 saint gods. The quality of the 8 saint gods' bodies was not low. They were all comparable to supreme-grade divine artifacts. The chaotic dim shadow flames naturally couldn't burn them down in a short time. As the chaotic nether shadow flame burned, the 8 little people continuously spat out blood essence and soul essence. With the cooperation of the chaotic nether shadow flame, the blood essence fused into the bodies of the 8 black-armored sacred gods. Xiaolingyu was actually refining the 8 saint gods like he was refining magic treasures. It was just that he was refining them personally, but the 8 little people were doing it for him. The 8 little people were refining them, but in reality, he was refining them himself. It was still slightly difficult for Xiaolingyu to refine a divine artifact now, and it would take a very long time. However, refining the bodies of the 8 saint gods shouldn't take too long. However, he was refining the bodies of the 8 saint gods at the same time, and there couldn't be the slightest pause or negligence in the process. Therefore, the refining time was greatly extended. After a full 1,000 years, the refining of the bodies of the 8 saint gods was finally completed. The next step was to refine the light balls that contained the powers and souls of the 8 black-armored sacred gods. In order to prevent the strength of the 8 saint gods from dropping too much after the refining, he had to be even more careful when refining the balls of light, which were of the utmost importance. This step of refining took twice as long as the previous step. It took a full 5,000 years to complete. At this point, Xiaolingyu's cultivation was truly facing danger. The reason why he was refining the 8 saint gods was naturally to refine them into his own doppelgangers. Once he succeeded, his strength would undoubtedly increase greatly. By then, with the 8 doppelgangers, he wouldn't need to fear the old monster Dugu, and he wouldn't need to fear the 7th level of the Heaven Sword technique. However, if he failed, not only would he lose the 8 little people, but Xiaolingyu would also be severely injured, and he would completely lose the possibility of successfully breaking through to the 9th transformation stage. Losing the 8 little people was equivalent to causing Xiaolingyu's power level to drop greatly. However, the 8 saint gods in front of Xiaolingyu were simply too tempting. He felt that this was a heaven-sent opportunity, and it was fate's arrangement. Therefore, he resolutely went through with this cultivation. The reason why the following cultivation was so dangerous was that he had to implant the 8 little people into the Saint God's internal space to replace the ball of light. If he wasn't careful, the ball of light would collapse, and the 8 little people would be blown to pieces. The reason why Xiaoling Yu had spent so much time refining the balls of light was to reduce the possibility of them collapsing and exploding. According to the records of the 9 Revolutions chaos formula, this last step wasn't very dangerous. However, the formula didn't mention using the body of a Saint God expert from another world to refine his doppelgangers. Xiaoling Yu was very clear that if he hadn't completely refined the ball, or if he hadn't completely erased the soul memories and consciousness in the ball, or if there had been other unexpected circumstances, it could have led to the failure of the little people replacing the ball. Xiaoling Yu checked carefully many more times before he decided to give it a try. He let the 8 small figures sink into the inner space of a black-armored sacred god. Since he had already reached this step, Xiaoling Yu definitely didn't plan to give up halfway. What made Xiaoling Yu rejoice was that although the danger had shown signs, the 8 little people contained extremely pure primal chaos divine power, and as the source energy, the primal chaos divine power was extremely inclusive. It was actually able to permeate and corrode the black ball of light that had already been refined. Thus, he was able to successfully pass the last step. The refined balls of light were now only the size of an egg, and each of them was swallowed into the stomach of a little person. After waiting for a whole year, Xiaoling Yu finally heaved a sigh of relief when he didn't see any strange movements from the 8 saint gods. It's done! Xiaoling Yu exited his seclusion with a joyful look on his face, and the 8 doppelgangers followed closely behind him. With a thought, the 8 doppelgangers moved together and blasted towards a mountain peak. Boom, 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 almost at the same time. Then, he let the 8 doppelgangers set up a domain. Although the power was slightly weaker than the previous 8 saint gods, Xiaoling Yu was very satisfied. After all, the 8 doppelgangers had just been refined, and they still needed to practice to be more coordinated. I have to let the black-armored sacred gods practice their combined battle formation more often when I have time. Moreover, there seems to be a very powerful battle formation in the inheritance of Liao Zhou. It can be practiced by 8 experts who have good teamwork. Sometimes, I have to let them try it out. Xiaoling Yu thought for a while, then waved his hand, and the 8 doppelgangers quickly shrank and sank into his body. The 8 little people that were originally floating above the chaotic divine infant and his dantian had now become 8 strange-looking black-armored cultivators. They were very quiet, and like the 8 little people, they slowly hovered above the chaotic divine infant's head and constantly cast light. 10,000 years have almost passed. I wonder how the situation in the narrow divine world is. Has Guanywei found Anya? Chapter 668. Xiaoling Yu didn't find Cui Yu and the old lady after searching the Weiyuan region for a while. However, he did see a land full of devastation. Xiaoling Yu could imagine that although he and the other experts had achieved a glorious victory in the battle with the Dark Armor Army, the Dark Armor Army would definitely seek revenge from them. Xiaoling Yu didn't stay in the Weiyuan region for long. He used the tubular sacred artifact to teleport to the Everlasting Joy region. He teleported a few times and sent a few messages, but Guanywei didn't reply. Xiaoling Yu wasn't anxious. He continued to teleport through the various regions of the narrow god realm. After each teleportation, he would send a message to Guanywei. As he teleported, Xiaoling Yu saw mountains and rivers shatter. He saw wails and cries spread across the land. He saw an extremely cold and desolate world. No wonder everyone called it a catastrophe. What else could be used to describe the scene in front of him other than a catastrophe? The narrow god realm, which used to be so flourishing, had become so bleak. It was truly shocking and heartbreaking. Even though Xiaoling Yu had long seen through life and death, he still felt a sense of desolation. From the fact that Guanywei's soul imprint hadn't disappeared, it could be seen that Guanywei hadn't died in the catastrophe. Thus, Xiaoling Yu continued to search. Before he ascended to the god realm, all the cultivators close to Xiaoling Yu had left soul jade tablets on him. Anya's soul jade tablet hadn't shattered, which meant that she hadn't met with any mishap. After 3 whole months, Xiaoling Yu, who used the tubular sacred artifact to teleport continuously, went through the entire narrow god realm. However, he still couldn't find Guanywei or Anya. He didn't even see Chuiyu and the old lady. In fact, he didn't see many living beings in the past 3 months. Everywhere the dark armored army passed, nothing was left behind. Their sins were monstrous. Xiaoling Yu patiently searched again. Although she found many human and demon cultivators who had luckily escaped the calamity, they could not provide any useful information to Xiaoling Yu. No matter how powerful the Black Armor Army was, it was impossible for them to cleanse the entire narrow god realm with blood and not leave a single person alive. In the next few years, Xiaoling Yu didn't gain much other than seeing more and more human and demon cultivators. However, after meeting so many human and demon cultivators, he had obtained some useful information. After the Battle of Weiyuan City, the other 3 batches of the Black Armor Army seemed to have gone berserk. Not only did they speed up, their desire to kill was even stronger than before. In the past few thousand years, the 3 batches of the Black Armor Army were like 3 large-scale meat grinders, rampaging through the narrow god realm. The experts of the human and demon races organized a few more counterattacks. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great, and the enemy's ship was too powerful, causing the experts of the 2 races to retreat repeatedly. When a human saint god and a demon saint god died on the battlefield, the experts of the human and demon races had no choice but to order the cultivators of the 2 races to flee on their own. Xiaoling Yu had searched the souls of the 8 Black Armor Holy Gods. He knew that the Black Armor Army originally only intended to sweep through the narrow god realm and then kill their way to the territories of the other races as quickly as possible. They didn't plan to cleanse the narrow god realm. The reason for the change was probably because the Battle of Weiyuan City had angered the higher-ups of the Black Armor Army. As for where the Black Armor Army had gone, no one knew. Xiaoling Yu didn't care about this. He could guess that the Black Armor Army should be preparing to return now that 10,000 years were about to pass. They might have already gathered at the center of the mountain tribe. They should be hiding in the territories of the other races. Anya might not be an exception. Xiaoling Yu frowned. If it was as he guessed, the difficulty of finding Anya would undoubtedly increase by many times. Since he had nothing to do, Xiaoling Yu activated greater teleportation and began to search the various races near the narrow god realm. This kind of search was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Unless one was extremely lucky, it was impossible to find anything. He didn't find the person he wanted to find, but he saw a group of Black Armor Army in the distance. They were galloping toward the mountain tribe. In the sky above the Black Armor Army, there was a billowing dark cloud that faintly shone with dark light. From Chuiyu and the old lady's description, Xiaoling Yu knew that there was a powerful warship in the dark cloud. It was very likely to be a divine spiritual treasure. It seems that they are indeed preparing to return. The catastrophe is finally over. Xiaoling Yu squinted for a while, then turned and flew away. After distancing himself from the Black Armor Army, Xiaoling Yu summoned his tubular saint artifact and prepared to teleport back to the narrow divine world to take a look around. However, as soon as he summoned the tubular saint artifact, he suddenly discovered that the space around him had suddenly darkened. Moreover, an invisible pressure had enveloped the surrounding space. The tubular saint artifact actually trembled under the pressure. Xiaoling Yu looked up in shock. He couldn't help but tremble in fear. He saw that the top of his head had already been enveloped by dark clouds. A circle of dark light was projected from the dark clouds, and it surrounded him impartially. The dark light moved extremely quickly and could block vision and divine sense. Xiaoling Yu could no longer see what was happening outside. The source of the dark light was a large iron door that was facing the ground and had already been opened. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu couldn't help but feel a little regretful. He shouldn't have wandered around the races near the narrow god realm. If he kept teleporting like this, it was inevitable that he would encounter the Black Armor Army on their way back. But he didn't expect that the enemy's warship would be able to find him so easily. An incomparably powerful suction force came from above. Even though Xiaoling Yu tried his best to resist, he couldn't stop his body from rising. He also constantly attacked the dark light that enveloped him, but the light's defense was too strong. He couldn't break through it at all. He didn't have much time. In just 2 breaths, his body was pulled into the iron door. Boom! The iron door closed. Xiaoling Yu was pulled into a completely sealed secret room. There were no doors or windows in this secret room. There were only cold iron walls, and it looked more like a prison cell. Xiaoling Yu tried his best to calm himself down. Then, he used all his strength and slammed his palm on the wall. The wall was very tough. Even though Xiaoling Yu's palm left a mark on it, not only did it recover immediately, but there was also a strong rebound force that sent Xiaoling Yu crashing into the wall behind him. Puff! Xiaoling Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was a little pale. Then, Xiaoling Yu released the chaotic dim shadow fire and used all his strength to burn the wall. But the wall was made of some unknown material. Under the burning of the chaotic dim shadow fire, it didn't show any signs of abnormality. Then, Xiaoling Yu used all sorts of methods to attack it, but they were all useless. Less than 15 minutes after he was pulled into the cell, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared on one of the walls of the cell, revealing the image of a black armored powerhouse. Xiaoling Yu didn't hold back. He immediately attacked the image on the wall again. Unfortunately, his attack was still ineffective. Kiki, the black armor elite, wasn't injured at all. He even let out a strange, eerie laugh. "I feel the aura of an elite from my clan on you." The voice of the black armor elite reverberated in the prison cell. Because Xiaoling Yu had searched the souls of the 8 black armor sacred gods before, he could understand what the black armor elite was saying. However, his expression was still cold and he didn't say anything. "Release the elite from my clan and I may let you leave this prison cell," the black armor elite said calmly. Xiaoling Yu only frowned slightly and remained silent. He could tell from the black armor elite's words that the black armor elite probably didn't know that the black armor elite on him had been refined into a doppelganger and was actually dead. "It seems that you won't compromise easily if you don't suffer a little. Then, have a taste of the Thunder Fiend Hellfire." The black armor elite disappeared. After a while, the temperature in the prison cell suddenly rose. Black flames appeared out of nowhere and instantly filled the small secret cell. At the same time, terrifying bolts of lightning wreaked havoc in the secret cell along with the sound of thunder. What surprised Xiaoling Yu was that the temperature released by the black flame was actually a little stronger than the primal chaos dark shadow flame. However, although this level of flame was able to make Xiaoling Yu feel unbearably hot, it was unable to harm his body in a short period of time. However, after the frightening lightning arcs struck him, they immediately charred his body black. Whether it was the black flames or the lightning, Xiaoling Yu couldn't withstand their attacks for too long. They were wreaking havoc in the prison cell at the same time. Xiaoling Yu couldn't use his full strength, so he had no other choice but to endure. He could hide in the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron, but if he chose to do so, it was very likely that he would be trapped in it forever. He could only seek temporary safety. The burning of the black flames and the bombardment of the lightning arcs lasted for less than an hour. Xiaoling Yu couldn't withstand it anymore and large wounds appeared on his body. What made him even more shocked was that the black flames and lightning also contained a very strong corrosive special energy. After the energy entered his body, it wreaked havoc in his body like thousands of ants gnawing at his heart. At the same time, it also pounced on his soul and sea of consciousness. The corrosion of the special energy didn't destroy Xiaoling Yu's flesh and bones, but it was unbearably itchy. If not for the fact that Xiaoling Yu's body had undergone many transformations and endured this kind of torture, he would probably be rolling on the ground and scratching his body with his hands. Chapter 669. The special energy was very penetrative, and it had already invaded Xiaoling Yu's consciousness and pounced on his golden soul pearl. The quality of Xiaoling Yu's golden soul pearl was definitely stronger than his physical body. Naturally, it would not be destroyed by the special energy that was not very strong. However, the special energy seemed to be only used to torture his body and soul. When he tried his best to resist, he could not resist the lightning and fire. Xiaoling Yu's body had been tortured countless times during his body metamorphosis. This made his body very resistant to the torture of the special energy. As for his soul, it had also been tested countless times by the mental demons of the inverse mystic realm. Similarly, it was not afraid of the effects of the special energy. Moreover, both his body and soul were very resilient to all kinds of torture. After Xiaoling Yu guarded his mind, the effect of the special energy on him was only to make his face paler and his body tremble uncontrollably. However, the thunder fiend hellfire outside did not stop, and his injuries naturally worsened. A full 3 days passed. Just as Xiaoling Yu was about to collapse, the image of the black-armored powerful figure appeared on the wall of the cell again. How is it? The taste of the thunder fiend hellfire is not bad, right? You can last 3 days in the thunder fiend hellfire. You are already very strong. It would be a pity if you died just like that. Release the powerful figures of my race now, and I will still keep my promise. Otherwise, you will gradually turn into a puddle of dirty water in the thunder fiend hellfire. The other party's voice was clear, but Xiaoling Yu ignored it. After fighting in the cultivation world for so many years and experiencing so many storms, Xiaoling Yu had seen all kinds of cultivators and heard all kinds of words. He naturally did not believe that the other party would let him go if he released the 8 black-armored sacred gods. After all, the 8 black-armored sacred gods had already been refined and were no longer the black-armored sacred gods. Would the other party let him off easily after realizing this? Xiaoling Yu's lips curled into a bitter and mocking smile. He did not despair. Even if it was not for him, at the very least, there were still his 2 wives and his disciple in the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron. Furthermore, there were the icy soul heavenly silkworm and the glutton in the spirit beast pouch. For their sake, Xiaoling Yu would not allow herself to lose her life in such a desperate situation. Through the memories of the 8 black-armored sacred gods, Xiaoling Yu knew that there were no divine master experts in the black-armored army that had crossed over this time. Instead, they were divided into 8 armies, and each army had over 30 sacred gods. In other words, the strongest experts in this army were saint gods. If they didn't suffer too many losses, they would have no less than 30 saint gods. The other party seemed powerful, but as long as Xiaoling Yu could leave the secret chamber, she would be able to escape. The place where he had been captured was very far away from the mountain tribe. With the speed of this army, it would take them at least 1,000 years to cross that distance. The speed of the divine spiritual treasure was very fast, but the speed of the entire Black Armor army was not very fast. The Black Armor army was simply too large, and the ship could not accommodate all of them. Furthermore, the divine spiritual treasure would not carry them on its journey in order to train the younger generation of the mountain tribe. The dark-armored expert was furious when he noticed that the prisoner in the cell had ignored him. He grunted coldly and said, "Stupid human who doesn't know what's good for you. Once you die here, the experts of my race will naturally show themselves. Just wait for death within the torment of baleful karmic flames." The black-armored figure disappeared again. Lightning flashed in the cell, and the karmic fire burned even more fiercely. Should she hide? Xiaoling Yu was faced with a difficult choice. Hiding in the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron was definitely the worst and most helpless choice. However, the tubular sacred artifact was unable to use greater teleportation here, because the space here had been tampered with. After persevering for nearly 10 days, Xiaoling Yu swallowed the last saint pill that Qiyu had given him, allowing him to persevere for a little longer. The sacred pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and a pure and rich medicinal power quickly acted on his body and soul. Perhaps it was because his injuries were more serious, or perhaps it was because his strength had improved, but the medicinal power of the sacred pill was fully exerted in 100 breaths, and Xiaoling Yu's injuries were completely healed. However, the sacred pill was gone, and the Thunder Fiend karmic fire was still raging. Xiaolingyu was still trapped in the cell. Even if he could endure for another 10 days, what would happen after that? Xiaolingyu began to ponder as he examined his body. He did not think of a solution, but when he checked his body, he was surprised to find that the quality of his physical body had improved a little after this baptism. This gave Xiaolingyu inspiration, and his mind became active. He thought, the Thunder Fiend karmic fire has thunder in its fire. It is the most masculine, but it also has an evil yin. Although it is not as powerful as the white flame, it is slightly stronger than the chaotic phantom fire. Isn't it suitable for me to temper my physical body? There was no better way at the moment, and he did not have much time to think of a solution. He could only brace himself and temper his physical body according to his own ideas. However, this was not a safe place after all, and it was also very dangerous for him to temper his physical body here. If a black-armored expert rushed in at the critical moment of tempering his physical body, or if the other party stopped the Thunder Fiend karmic fire and changed the attack method, it would be a great threat to Xiaolingyu. Therefore, in the process of tempering his physical body, Xiaolingyu not only had to pay attention to his own body at all times and control the tempering progress, but he also had to pay attention to the movements outside, which would make it difficult for him to concentrate on his cultivation. The best way to solve this problem was to have an expert to protect him. Xiaolingyu hesitated for a moment, then asked Fudi to come out. Fudi was very unhappy with the environment in the cell. After coming out, he let out a low growl, and his body released the chaotic light to resist the flames and lightning. Looking at Fudi's appearance, he would not be able to last long in here. Xiaolingyu then asked Lil Bing to come out, and Lil Bing's body immediately emitted a cold mist after he came out. After observing for a while, Xiaolingyu said telepathically, "Fudi, you will resist the lightning attack. Lil Bing, you will be responsible for lowering Fudi's temperature. Both of you have to pay attention to the surroundings at all times. Once you notice anything unusual, inform me immediately." Fudi and Lil Bing nodded their heads. Fudi and Lil Bing worked together, and with their combined strength, they were able to withstand the Thunder Fiend karmic fire for quite some time. Xiaolingyu then relaxed and entered the state of cultivation, wholeheartedly immersing himself in tempering his physical body. Another month passed, and the black-armored expert's image appeared on the wall of the cell again. 2 more pets? What miraculous pets! Just the 2 of them, how long can they last? Their bodies have been burned to such a miserable state by the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, and they are still disobedient. Since you like to be tortured, continue to enjoy it. At most, I will deal with you when we return. The black-armored expert's image muttered to himself, then disappeared. Xiaolingyu's current appearance was indeed extremely miserable. His entire body was covered in burns, and his flesh and even his bones were exposed. It could be said that he no longer looked like a human. He was hideous and terrifying, and it was a ghastly sight. However, only Xiaolingyu knew that he was in this state not because he could not withstand the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, but because he was cultivating. When his body was completely burned by the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, he would take out some nourishing or strengthening materials to prevent his body from collapsing after being refined by the Thunder Fiend karmic fire. As long as his body did not collapse and his life essence and vitality were not lost, his body would recover. Under Xiaolingyu's control, the body tempering technique was carried out meticulously and methodically. Under the effect of the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, the toughness of his body was gradually increasing. However, the Thunder Fiend karmic fire was not an ordinary high-level flame, but a strange and powerful special flame. Using this kind of flame to temper the body would definitely have some unexpected effects. As for whether it was good or bad, he could only know after the cultivation was completed. In order not to arouse the other party's suspicion, Xiaolingyu did not temper his body gradually from his feet to his head. Instead, his entire body was being burned by the Thunder Fiend karmic fire and tempered at the same time. Moreover, the Thunder Fiend karmic fire was not under his control. Even if he wanted to temper it gradually, the Thunder Fiend karmic fire would not cooperate. tempering his entire body at the same time naturally increased the difficulty by a lot. Moreover, his entire body would look extremely terrifying, and not a single piece of his skin would be intact. To be precise, he basically had no skin now. Only his exposed flesh and bones could be seen. It was extremely miserable. Under the burning of the fire and the electric shock of the thunder, Shaolin Yu's flesh and bones were constantly being torn and destroyed. Then, under the guidance of the spell, they were reformed and strengthened. The entire process was not much different from the body tempering technique in the past. However, not only would the slightest bit of carelessness lead to eternal damnation, he also felt that there seemed to be something strange in his body. Shaolin Yu did not know whether these strange things were brought about by the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, or the strange special energy in the Thunder Fiend karmic fire, or if they were brought about at the same time. However, the cultivation had to continue. While Shaolin Yu was cultivating, the image of the strong warrior in black armor would often appear on the cell wall. However, the other party could not see what he was doing. They could only see that he was miserable, so they only thought that he was walking towards death and did not do anything else. Even if the other party did react, as long as the foodie and Xiao Bing bought some time for Shaolin Yu would be able to escape from his cultivation. Although he looked miserable now, he actually still had more than 90% of his combat power. After all, the 8 doppelgangers were not affected much. Chapter 670. Lil Bing and Foodie were extremely tired after holding on for so long. Shaolin Yu praised them and asked them to return to their respective spirit beast pouches to rest and recover. As for Shaolin Yu himself, he was still lying on the floor of the cell in a miserable state. Gradually, Shaolin Yu weakened the aura he exuded and let his life essence seep out, making him look like he was withering away. The image of the black-armored expert appeared on the wall of the secret room again. He sneered at Shaolin Yu and said, "Stubborn fool, your death is not to be regretted." Not long after, the images of several black-armored experts appeared on the 4 walls of the cell. They stared at Shaolin Yu for an entire month before one of them said, "It seems that he is really on the verge of death. There is no need to be afraid of him. Kiki, I'm very curious. Who are the experts of our race on him? I'm more curious about how this kid can deal with the experts of our race. The fact that he can last so long under the burning of the Thunder Fiend karmic fire is enough to prove that he's not ordinary. Let's not stand here and watch. He's already lost the ability to resist. Let's go in and take a look. I think we should wait until we meet up with the other brigades before we deal with him. Kiki, when the other brigades are present, there won't be so many benefits. Maybe there's someone among us who won't get a share." The black-armored experts discussed for a while before their images disappeared from the wall. 10 breaths later, one of the walls of the cell suddenly parted to form a large metal door. As soon as the iron door was opened, Shaolin Yu's flesh and blood surged with even denser life essence. In almost an instant, his miserable appearance disappeared and was replaced by bronze skin. After his body was tempered again, Shaolin Yu still didn't look very strong. There were no big chunks of muscle on his body, but he didn't look thin either. His skin still glowed faintly. The black-armored experts had just looked into the cell when they felt a strong aura rush toward them. "Oh no!" One of the black-armored experts cried out and quickly retreated with the other experts of the same race, dispersing. At this moment, Shaolin Yu had already rushed out of the cell and put on a brand new set of green cloth clothes for himself. After quickly scanning her surroundings, Shaolin Yu realized that she was in a very spacious hall. This hall was no less than 500 feet in length and width. It was surrounded by extremely hard walls and a few iron doors. Only one of them was open. There were 6 other black-armored powerhouses in the hall. Judging from their auras, they were all Saint God experts. To be able to endure the burning of the Thunder Fiend karmic fire for nearly 1,000 years, we have truly underestimated you. After a black-armored sacred god spoke, the 6 of them took their positions and overlapped their domains. Shaolin Yu only smiled at the black-armored experts when he felt the pressure from the other party's domain gradually increase. Then, With a thought, 8 black lights flew out from his body and stood still against the wall. When the black-armored sacred gods in the hall saw Xiaoling Yu's 8 doppelgangers, they were naturally extremely shocked and enraged. But when they felt that their 6 domains were instantly suppressed, they were clearly uneasy. They all looked toward the iron doors that were wide open. After being tortured for so many years, Xiaoling Yu could be said to have profited from the disaster and had made considerable progress. However, he still hated these black-armored experts very much. They were clearly prepared to kill him. He was not a generous person to begin with, so naturally, he would not let them off so easily. With a thought, the divine artifact, the yin-yang mirror, also appeared. Then, 4 phantom monsters formed. Xiao Bing and Fudi were still resting and recovering. Xiaoling Yu did not ask them for help. The current situation did not require their help. Originally, the 8 doppelgangers and Xiaoling Yu's abilities were enough to deal with the 6 black-armored sacred gods. However, in order to end the battle quickly and not give them a chance to wait for reinforcements, Xiaoling Yu still let the 4 phantom monsters set up the 4 symbols domain and charged out first. There was almost no suspense in the battle. With a powerful lineup, Xiaoling Yu's side overpowered the 6 black-armored sacred gods with an overwhelming advantage. The 6 black-armored sacred gods were completely suppressed in terms of their domains. The 4 phantom monsters were also fearless in battle. In addition, after the quality of his physical body had increased, Xiaoling Yu's speed was not slower than a sacred god cultivator. With the 8 doppelgangers joining in, the 6 black-armored sacred gods were severely injured before they could pose any effective threat. Without any hesitation, Xiaoling Yu directly imprisoned the 6 black-armored sacred gods and threw them into the 8-legged Tai Chi cauldron. Xiaoling Yu did not directly kill the 6 black-armored sacred gods as he was worried that he would attract the attention of other black-armored experts. First, he searched the soul of a black-armored sacred god before walking towards the only open metal door in the hall. Just as he reached the door, he saw a black-armored cultivator charging over. Without thinking, he lifted his leg and kicked over. That black-armored cultivator was only at the God Emperor realm. Naturally, he could not avoid being struck by Xiaoling Yu's flying kick. His body flew out like an arrow before crashing to the ground. After twitching a few times on the ground, he died. Just a simple kick was enough to kill a black-armored sacred god emperor. This was enough to show how strong Xiaoling Yu's physical body was. Following the route in the black-armored sacred god's memory, Xiaoling Yu went through a few turns in a tunnel. Occasionally, he would have to invite a black-armored sacred god to use their secret technique to open a metal door that blocked the way. After about 15 minutes, he finally reached the exit of the ship. However, the exit was not only completely sealed, but there were also more than 10 black-armored sacred gods and more than 100 black-armored sacred god emperors blocking the way. With such a lineup, Xiaoling Yu naturally could not force his way out. Before they launched a collective attack, he had already retreated decisively. With the black-armored sacred god's memory of the ship's internal structure, he could also force the black-armored sacred god to open a path for him. Xiaoling Yu quickly headed towards another exit. There were only 36 black-armored sacred gods on this ship. 6 of them were already Xiaoling Yu's captives. However, the other 30 were not people that Xiaoling Yu could deal with alone. However, there were only 2 exits on this ship and both of them were definitely heavily guarded. If he wanted to break through, he would definitely have to pay a hefty price. Thinking of this, Xiaoling Yu suddenly gave up on the idea of going to the other exit. After pondering for a while, he changed his route. If I'm going to play, I'll play hard. Xiaoling Yu sneered as he advanced with a gloomy face. The ship's internal structure was huge. However, there were not many black-armored sacred gods. It seemed that only experts were qualified to enter and experts were in the minority. Along the way, there were countless metal doors blocking the way. This caused Xiaoling Yu to be unable to increase his speed. However, he was not in a hurry because he knew that the other black-armored sacred gods would also be blocked by the metal doors. They would also have to use various secret techniques to open the metal doors. As a divine spiritual treasure-grade ship, it did not belong to any of the black-armored sacred gods. It only belonged to the entire black-armored sacred race. However, due to its ingenious design, even if there was no master controlling it, the experts of the black-armored sacred race could still use some secret techniques to control it. After a full 3 days, Xiaoling Yu finally arrived in front of an obviously wider metal door with the help of the 6 black-armored sacred gods. Behind this metal door was the control room of the entire ship. It was also the core area of the ship. In order to enter the ship's control room, at least 10 black-armored sacred gods had to perform a secret skill at the same time to open the big iron door. Although Xiaoling Yu had only captured 6 of them, there were still 8 black-armored clones. If the restriction on the metal door allowed the 8 clones to enter, Xiaoling Yu would be able to enter the control room. If the restriction on the metal door did not allow him to enter, Xiaoling Yu could think of other ways. After all, even if he was trapped in the ship, the other party would not be able to do anything to him before they met up with the rest of the black-armored brigade. The 6 black-armored sacred gods did not want to lead Xiaoling Yu there. However, Xiaoling Yu had already searched one of their souls and knew about the existence of the control room. They did not have the courage to face death, so they could only cooperate with Xiaoling Yu. To Xiaoling Yu's delight, the restriction on the metal door accepted the seals of the 8 clones. In addition to the cooperation of the 6 black-armored experts, the metal door of the control room slowly opened. At this moment, the black-armored experts stationed in the ship arrived one after another. Under their watchful eyes, Xiaoling Yu entered the control room. After entering, Xiaoling Yu once again let the yin-yang mirror release 4 illusory monsters to block the door. He then let the 8 clones support the 4 illusory monsters from behind. Although the door of the control room looked big, the 4 illusory monsters were enough to seal it. They were not afraid of any attacks and blocked the door firmly. Although the other party had many experts, it would be difficult for them to stare at the 4 illusory monsters and the 8 clones to force their way in. At least, they would not be able to do so for a while. The control room was very spacious. It was tens of thousands of feet wide and hundreds of thousands of feet tall. However, the structure was very simple. There was only a high platform, on which floated a black ball of light that was slightly larger than an ordinary house. Xiaoling Yu knew that the black ball of light was the control room and core of the ship. Controlling it was equivalent to controlling the entire ship. Without any hesitation, Xiaoling Yu flew toward the black ball of light. However, as soon as he got close, an extremely powerful black light turned into a light sword and slashed at his head. Xiaoling Yu shouted in a low voice and blasted out a seal of chaos to block it. However, the light sword instantly slashed open the seal of chaos and almost slashed his head. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu saw that the high platform was engraved with mysterious and complicated runes. He knew that the altar was not simple. Time waited for no man. There was a large group of black-armored experts outside the door. Xiaoling Yu did not have much time to think. He directly called out the magic treasure chair and threw it at the altar. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.